Chapter 761. The situation in Zhang Xiaohu's Dantian at this time made Zhang Xiaohua a little surprised. Although the qi mass formed by the yin and yang inner force had already absorbed all the ethereal divine techniques inner force and the medicinal effect of the universal pill, it was still the size of a pea and did not expand at all. Previously, any inner force in Zhang Xiaohu's Dantian was much bigger than this pea, but now it was forcefully compressed to such a small size. This was somewhat out of Zhang Xiaohua's understanding. However, thinking about the word fuse, Zhang Xiaohua had some understanding. When different elixir liquids were fused together, there would be some changes in the size. It was just that she didn't notice it at that time. And when the inner force was fused together, the space it occupied would be even smaller. Of course, there was another reason that Zhang Xiaohua neglected. That was, Zhang Xiaohua was in a hurry at that time. When she saw that the technique of fusing the elixir was effective, it was as if she had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. She injected the technique into Zhang Xiaohu's Dantian again and again. In fact, this technique might be enough once, but how could it withstand Zhang Xiaohua's repeated attempts? Of course, the two types of inner force with different attributes were compressed to the point that they couldn't be any smaller. In addition, due to the injection of the technique by Zhang Xiaohua, as well as the medicinal effect of the meridian-nourishing pill, star power, and some immortal true qi, the pea-sized yin and yang inner force seemed to have a motive force. It slowly rotated in Zhang Xiaohu's Dantian, just like the core in Zhang Xiaohua's Naiwan Palace. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know that the disciple that Yang Ruping mentioned had cultivated two types of inner force with the help of an immortal Dao expert. However, the yin and yang inner force mass in Zhang Xiaohu's Dantian was something that Zhang Xiaohua had never dreamed of. As for the development prospects of this yin and yang inner force mass, Zhang Xiaohua didn't know. However, when she thought about how the fusion of inner force could be combined with the elixir of the immortal Dao, Zhang Xiaohua knew that this thing was definitely not simple. With a thought, Zhang Xiaohua said, "Second brother, I have finished dealing with it. Adjust your breath and see if there is anything unusual." Okay. Zhang Xiaohu didn't dare to circulate the mental cultivation method. He only allowed Zhang Xiaohua to mess around in his Dantian. When he heard Zhang Xiaohua's words, his heart moved and the mental cultivation method of the ethereal god art immediately circulated. The yin and yang inner force mass slowly rotated and a trace of true qi was extracted from it. According to the circulation route of the ethereal god art, it circulated in Zhang Xiaohu's meridians for a cycle. Then, it increased a little and returned to the yin and yang inner force mass. When Zhang Xiaohu finished, Zhang Xiaohua asked nervously, "How is it?" "And it feels very good. It seems that the power of this inner force is much stronger than before. It has almost doubled. However, this is just a feeling. I have to try it in the future to know." "And how about the meridians?" "Fortunately, there was a tear just now and it still hurts. I think it will heal after a few days of rest." "Then, second brother, can you circulate the inner force of the Suhuan mental cultivation method for another cycle?" "This, I should be able to. Although I haven't circulated it before, I remember the meridian route. Let me try." After speaking, Zhang Xiaohu silently circulated the Suhuan mental cultivation method. He extracted the inner force refined by the Suhuan pill from the yin and yang inner force mass and slowly circulated it along the meridian route that was completely different from the ethereal god art. At first, it was very obscure and sometimes even stagnant. However, after one cycle, it returned to his Dantian with a slight increase. Following that, Zhang Xiaohu didn't stop. He extracted another trace of inner force and circulated it along the same route as the ethereal god art. This time, it was less obscure and more smooth. When the inner force of the Suhuan mental cultivation method returned to his Dantian, Zhang Xiaohu opened his eyes and let out a long breath. The Suhuan mental cultivation method really lives up to its reputation. Just these two cycles of the ethereal god art's refined inner force was equivalent to 3 cycles of the ethereal god art. That's right. This Suhuan mental cultivation method is something that even the inner disciples covet. If it can't compare to the ethereal god art, then how could the sect leader win your heart? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, There shouldn't be any problems with two different cultivation methods, right? Zhang Xiaohu smiled comfortably and said, not only is there no problem, it's really wonderful. Not to mention that the two inner force cultivation methods are different. The way the meridians temper the two types of inner force is also different. Other people will be tired after 10 cycles of circulation of the meridians, but I'll adjust my breathing for 20 cycles and my meridians won't be tired. Also, I've already tested it just now. When I only circulate the ethereal god art's cultivation method, the Suhuan mental cultivation method can also produce a trace of inner force. It's just that this inner force is much less than the ethereal god art. When I circulate the Suhuan mental cultivation method, the inner force of the ethereal god art will also increase. It can be said that the inner force of these two cultivation methods has a relationship of mutual promotion and restraint. Mutual promotion and restraint? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and thought, why is it similar to the five elements? But this is only the inner force of two attributes. Could it be that I can also cultivate other cultivation methods? It's possible. When refining pills, don't there also need to be a few main ingredients and some auxiliary ingredients? It's the same for cultivation methods. Unfortunately, Zhang Xiaohu had almost lost his life just now. How could Zhang Xiaohua still dare to think about it? She only thought in her heart, the inner force of two attributes should be related to the Tao of life and death. Should I tell second brother about my own understanding? It's just that the understanding of the Tao of heaven had always been something that could be understood but not explained. Wanting to let Zhang Xiaohu understand was not an easy matter. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua thought again. Zhang Xiaohu was unable to cultivate the immortal Tao cultivation method, but he should be able to cultivate the martial cultivation method. The soaring dragon cultivation method that she stole from young Master Long was not bad. If Zhang Xiaohu were to learn it, it should be very helpful. When Zhang Xiaohua told Zhang Xiaohu about the soaring dragon cultivation method, Zhang Xiaohu's head shook like a rattle drum. What a joke. He had just cultivated the Su Huan cultivation method and Zhang Xiaohua's nameless chant, which he needed to comprehend. Where would he have the spare time to cultivate this? Moreover, that dangerous scene earlier was still lingering in his mind. He didn't want to cause any more problems before he succeeded in cultivating the two cultivation methods. Zhang Xiaohua thought about it and felt that it made sense. This soaring dragon cultivation method was not a cultivation method to cultivate inner force. It was just a technique to use inner force. If there was time, she would write down this cultivation method and pass it to Zhang Xiaohu. There was no need to teach it now. Following that, Zhang Xiaohua jumped up and smiled. Since it's like this, then today can be considered a great success. Although it was very dangerous just now, I didn't expect second brother's character to be so good. You were actually able to turn danger into safety. As the saying goes, if one survives a great disaster, there will be good fortune in the future. Little brother wishes second brother's unrivaled martial arts, unifying the Jianghu and having a long life. Ha ha ha. Zhang Xiaohu also sat up from the ground and laughed. Thanks for your praise. If I don't have unrivaled martial arts, then I'll be letting down your prophecy. The two of them laughed and walked out of the small house. There was no one in the front yard, and they didn't know where Changgu and Chen Shan went. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the sky and said, Second brother, it's getting late. I have to go. Take a look at the pill furnace. Manor Hedo's illness, sigh. He still needs to rely on this pill. I'll come back tomorrow. If you have time, bring Captain He to the backyard. Zhang Xiaohu was somewhat worried. Xiaohua, isn't this too tiring for you? Why don't we wait a few days? Don't, second brother. Seeing Captain He like this makes my heart ache. I'd rather be a little tired so that Captain He can get back on his feet and recover his martial arts. Only when Captain He returns to his previous state will my heart be at peace. Yes, at this moment, Zhang Xiaohua also felt a little guilty. If he hadn't attracted too much yuan qi from the medicinal field, the medicinal plants wouldn't have sprouted and He Tianshu wouldn't have ended up like this. Zhang Xiaohu didn't know the cause and effect of this and only nodded. Then, you should rest more. If you don't feel well tomorrow, it's better to postpone it. If the same dangerous situation occurs tomorrow, it's not good. I know, second brother. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said somewhat tiredly, I'll know after I rest for a night. Oh, by the way, second brother, when you practice, try to make the two kinds of internal forces equal. Don't have one more and one less. Otherwise, there may be some problems. Well, how can I not know this? You should go back quickly. Zhang Xiaohu chuckled and drove Zhang Xiaohua out of the small courtyard. Coming out of Zhang Xiaohu's small courtyard, the entire Misty Hall felt a little quiet. Occasionally, a few male disciples glanced at Zhang Xiaohua and walked away without greeting her. There was not even a single female disciple. Zhang Xiaohua didn't return to the courtyard of the Pill Tower Hall. Instead, she went to a secluded place and made a hand sign. Circulating the little amount of genuine qi in her meridians, she went straight to the pill room at the top of the mountain. When she arrived at the pill room, the genuine qi in her meridians was gone. Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly looked at the pill furnace. Fortunately, there was still some time before the liquid was melted. She didn't dare to neglect and quickly sat down cross-legged. She took out a primordial stone and replenished the genuine qi in her body. When the time was right, Zhang Xiaohua didn't get up. She used her divine sense to carefully observe the temperature of the pill furnace. At the right time, she made a hand sign to melt the liquid. She put several main ingredients and more than 10 auxiliary ingredients of the Spirit Awakening pill together and let the medicinal liquids of different attributes interact with each other and gradually fuse. After all this was done, Zhang Xiaohua carefully looked at the earth fire again. She made a few hand signs to better control it. Only then did she sit cross-legged again and carefully think about what she had learned today. Just now, when she helped Zhang Xiaohu cultivate the two types of internal strength, although she met with setbacks at the beginning, the final fusion of the two types of internal strength gave Zhang Xiaohua a lot of inspiration. She might not have two types of genuine qi, but was it possible to compress the genuine qi in her dantian into a ball like Zhang Xiaohu's internal strength? That way, wouldn't he be able to refine even more true qi? -3. Chapter 762. After thinking for a while, Zhang Xiaohua felt that it made sense. Since Zhang Xiaohu felt that the power of his inner strength had increased after compressing his inner strength, he should be able to do it too. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua made a gesture and cast the same liquid melting incantation into his middle dantian. However, when the incantation entered his body, it didn't change like Zhang Xiaohu's dantian, which pushed the rotation and compression of his inner strength. It was like a clay ox entering the sea without any effect. It didn't trigger any changes in the true energy in his middle dantian. Zhang Xiaohua was dumbfounded. What's going on? He thought of a lot of bad consequences, but he never thought that there would be no reaction. After that, he cast a few more incantations unwillingly, but they were all ineffective. Zhang Xiaohua gave up dejectedly. He couldn't understand why Zhang Xiaohu could do it, but he couldn't. Could it be that my character isn't as good as second brother's? Zhang Xiaohua brought out the common answer to all the questions. Just when Zhang Xiaohua was puzzled, he had a slight oversight. This oversight was that he forgot the difference between true energy and inner strength. The reason why Zhang Xiaohu's inner strength could be merged with Zhang Xiaohua's incantation was that true energy was of a much higher level than inner strength. The incantation formed by true energy could have unpredictable effects on inner strength. When Zhang Xiaohua used his quintessential qi to form a hand seal, it was as though he was scooping up water from a water tank with a ladle before pouring it into the water tank. The quintessential qi in the water tank was still the same. In other words, if Zhang Xiaohua wanted to achieve the same effect as Zhang Xiaohu, then he had to cultivate a martial art that was of a higher level than his Forget Worries Sutra. The true energy in that person's meridians must be more pure and of a higher level than Zhang Xiaohua's. Only then could he control and compress the true energy in Zhang Xiaohua's middle dantian. When he couldn't compress the true energy in his dantian, Zhang Xiaohua thought of another problem. That was related to the sky stalactite. At that time, Zhang Xiaohua felt that the heaven stalactite was rich in heaven and earth yuan qi. Moreover, it grew together with the black-white fruit, so it must be a very precious item. Therefore, she carefully collected it. However, the heaven and earth yuan qi seemed to be somewhat different from the heaven and earth yuan qi that Zhang Xiaohua absorbed. Therefore, when Zhang Xiaohua put it in her purse, she completely forgot about it. Even after returning from the Yulong Grand Canyon, When Zhang Xiaohua counted her gains, she did not remember this jade bottle that contained the heaven stalactite. Until today, the whitening elixir that didn't even use a single drop of sky stalactite had caused a stir among all the female disciples of the Misty Hall. Only then did Zhang Xiaohua remember the essence of heaven and earth in the stalactite. What did Zhang Xiaohua lack the most right now? The first was divine sense, and the second was true qi. Since the heaven stalactite could replenish his true qi and even increase his cultivation, how could he not want to give it a try? Previously, he had estimated that since he did not know the method to refine it, his meridians might be damaged. However, when he thought about the 3 drops of stone milk he fed to Little Black, Little Yellow, and Yellow Wind, he figured that he could consume it with his mouth as well. Zhang Xiaohua took out the jade bottle containing the heaven stalactite milk from her purse. She opened the lid and smelled the faint fragrance. With a slight movement of her finger, a drop of heaven stalactite milk flew out of the jade bottle. Zhang Xiaohua put away the jade bottle and opened her mouth. The drop of heaven stalactite milk slid down her throat, following which, Zhang Xiaohua wrapped it in a ball of zhenqi and sent it into her meridians. She wanted to slowly refine it and melt it into zhenqi. However, out of Zhang Xiaohua's expectations, even though he had been silently circulating the Worry-Free Heart Sutra to refine the heaven stalactite milk in her meridians, the drop of heaven stalactite milk slowly decreased. There was no excess zhenqi being produced. What is going on? Zhang Xiaohua was extremely depressed. Just now, the method to melt the heaven stalactite milk was useful to Zhang Xiaohu, but it had no effect on her. Right now, the heaven stalactite milk was useful to Huang Feng and Little Yellow, but it was useless to her. It was fine if she said it was useless, but the drop of heaven stalactite milk was still decreasing. Even Zhang Xiaohua did not know where the drop of heaven stalactite milk went. When the last drop of heaven stalactite milk disappeared, Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense discovered that the heaven stalactite milk had turned into something similar to the yuan qi of heaven and earth and merged into her body. As for where it merged into, she did not know. Since this heaven stalactite milk can turn into something similar to the yuan qi of heaven and earth, then my meridian should be able to refine and absorb it. But why is it not working? Is it because the Tranquil Heart Sutra is unable to absorb it? Or is it because my meridians are unable to absorb it? Zhang Xiaohua could not help but think about it. At this moment, he recalled the scene a few days ago when he used the delusion breaker Dharma Eye to look at himself. He remembered seeing a few strands of silk floating around his bones, and the color was different. Could it be that these strands of silk were the yuan qi of heaven and earth? Zhang Xiaohua almost wanted to open the delusion breaker Dharma Eye again, but Zhang Xiaohua's zhenqi was completely depleted. How could she have the energy to open it again? Perhaps I should wait until tomorrow when I recover from my break, Zhang Xiaohua thought to himself. But if these strands of silk are the yuan qi of heaven and earth, why are the colors different? Could it be that there are different kinds of yuan qi of heaven and earth? In an instant, Zhang Xiaohua was shocked by her own ridiculous conjecture. Following that, more questions popped up in her mind. Since the yuan qi of heaven and earth is different, then what kind of yuan qi can I absorb? What are the other kinds of yuan qi of heaven and earth? How can I absorb them? Is it the meridians or the cultivation method? Following that, Zhang Xiaohua thought about the dense meridians that she saw on Byron's body. Gosh! Zhang Xiaohua sighed and smiled bitterly. The path of cultivation is indeed long. Even if you understand a little, there will be more. Not to mention the realm of understanding the way of heaven. Even the foundation of cultivation is something that I haven't understood yet. If there is a way in my heart, I will search for it from top to bottom. After lamenting, Zhang Xiaohua felt exhausted. She took out the primordial stones and sat down cross-legged. She closed her eyes and began to cultivate the Carefree Heart Sutra. Not long after, she fell into a deep sleep. The starry sky and the starlight arrived as expected. When she woke up the next day, Zhang Xiaohua was full of energy. All her exhaustion was swept away. The true qi in her meridians was still the same, only about half of it. However, the Dan core in her Niwen palace had improved a little. When Zhang Xiaohua saw the various medicinal liquids melting in the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace, Zhang Xiaohua felt relieved and left the alchemy room. Facing the rising sun, she practiced the Big Dipper magical fist, using the mysterious flow to refine her bones. Although the Big Dipper mystical fist was the same as before, Zhang Xiaohua felt that there was something different about it. However, when he tried to explain it, he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Could it be that the heaven stalactite is beneficial to the Big Dipper magical fist? Zhang Xiaohua thought to herself. Of course, this was only Zhang Xiaohua's conjecture. She did not have any real evidence. After practicing the Big Dipper magical fist, Zhang Xiaohua murmured, "Life is so beautiful." She took a deep breath of the clear morning breeze at the top of Serene Peak and ran all the way to the back of Serene Peak, to Oyan's residence. Zhang Xiaohua entered the courtyard. As soon as she came out of the corner of the room, she saw an old man with gray hair sitting in front of Oyan's bed. His back was facing her, but his hand was on Oyan's wrist. It seemed that he was checking Oyan's pulse. Is this the doctor of Lingxiang Peak? Zhang Xiaohua thought, and immediately released her divine sense to take a closer look. However, when he released his divine sense and saw that the doctor had a few strands of dark beard on his slender face, the doctor seemed to have sensed something. He opened his eyes and looked around in astonishment. Ouch! Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. She made a gesture and hid underground. He did not expect the doctor to have such a high cultivation level. He could actually sense her divine sense. Careless. Zhang Xiaohua silently scolded himself. This time, he carefully released a bit of his divine sense to observe the room. However, this time, he didn't dare to directly cover the doctor. Because of this, the doctor didn't look around. Zhang Xiaohua secretly wiped the sweat off his forehead. Before he entered the cult of fragrance, he had been practicing the nameless formula in order to deceive the eyes of the elders and consecrators. But after being in the pill hall for so long, he had not met any top experts. Zhang Xiaohua had unconsciously let his guard down. Today, he had actually used his divine sense to envelop the other party. He had been too careless. After a long time, the doctor stood up and said something to Qiu Tong, who was accompanying him. Then, he walked to the main hall and picked up the brush and ink on the table. After writing for a while, he cupped his hands and left. Qiu Tong carefully saw him out. After the doctor left, Zhang Xiaohua came out from underground and took the prescription that the doctor left behind. He carefully looked at it. Before he could finish reading the prescription, he heard footsteps. Zhang Xiaohua looked outside carefully. Only then did he relax. You. Xiaohua, when did you come in? The person who came back was Qiu Tong. Looking at Qiu Tong's indifferent expression, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, I came in when the doctor of Lingxiang Peak was examining the patient. Oh, so that's how it is. Qiu Tong nodded and said, however, you're wrong. This person is not a simple doctor of Lingxiang Peak. He is Tang Jinsheng, known as the Divine Doctor. But isn't the godly doctor also a doctor? Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. Of course, this senior Tang Jin is one of the few male elders on Lingering Fragrance Peak. His martial arts, character, and prestige can be counted on one hand. Elder? Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. No wonder he's so powerful. He's actually an elder. Powerful? Qiu Tong asked. You've seen Senior Tang before? Not at all. This is the first time I've seen him today, and the first time I've heard of his name. Then why did you say he's powerful? Qiu Tong was ready to get to the bottom of this. -3. Chapter 763. Zhang Xiaohua did not hide it and whispered, when I came in just now, Divine Dr. Tang felt something. I'm not sure if he knew I was coming, but looking at him, his martial arts should not be weak. Oh, so that's how it is. Qiu Tong nodded and said, Divine Dr. Tang is not like other doctors. He is famous in Lingxiang Peak. Just as you guessed, he is not only skilled in medicine, but his internal strength is also impressive to ordinary inner disciples. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, It seems that the hierarch values young Miss very much. He actually brought out such a person. I think young Miss should be fine. But then she changed the topic and said, But I think Divine Dr. Tang's prescriptions are mainly focused on recuperation. It may not be able to cure young Miss's illness. Qiu Tong's face darkened. That's right. According to Divine Dr. Tang, young Miss is terminally ill. I'm afraid. I'm afraid that she can't be saved. He can only prescribe some useless prescriptions, but it's better than nothing. Sigh. If only Divine Dr. Tang came earlier. Earlier? Zhang Xiaohua was a little surprised. Divine Dr. Tang said that he came late. If he had taken over the treatment when young Miss just fell ill, maybe there would be a 30% chance. Only 30%. Zhang Xiaohua was even more surprised. She unconsciously doubted the awakening pill she refined. Then why did he only come now? I remember Sister Chiu Tong said that young Miss fell ill not long ago. Did we pass the news to Lingxiang Peak? Chiu Tong shook her head blankly and said, who knows what the hierarch is thinking? What's the use of only paying attention to young Miss's illness now? Zhang Xiaohua's heart moved and said, then, did Divine Dr. Tang ask about the acupoints on young Miss's head? Yes, of course we did. However, we didn't directly ask who hit the acupoints. Instead, we asked which doctor had come to Lingering Fragrance Peak. We also asked if we had found anyone else. Well, we especially asked if we had found anyone from Misty Hall. Then, she worriedly looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said, Divine Dr. Tang also said that Mrs. illness has been delayed, and the treatment has been blindly performed by a quack doctor. No matter what kind of medicine is prescribed, it will be ineffective. This, Zhang Xiaohua was a little hesitant. After all, Tang Tong was a legitimate divine doctor, and she was just a newbie. Perhaps Divine Dr. Tang's words made some sense, so she said awkwardly, Sister Chiu Tong, my medical skills may not be as good as Divine Dr. Tang's, but I. When Chiu Tong heard this, she immediately understood Zhang Xiaohua's meaning. She waved her hand and said, Xiaohua, don't take these words to heart. Elder, you and I know about your relationship with young Mississippi. If you have the ability, you will definitely give it your all. You will definitely not have the slightest intention of hurting young Mississippi. What Divine Dr. Tang said is probably what the previous doctors said. Zhang Xiaohua sighed and said, sigh, perhaps. Actually, I don't have much confidence in myself. Don't worry about this, Xiaohua. If it was me, I would also give it a try. Even if it's young Miss, she will definitely let you treat her. Chiu Tong didn't stand on ceremony with Zhang Xiaohua and directly said what she meant. Oh, by the way, Xiaohua, Divine Dr. Tang seems to have found something wrong with the acupoints on young Miss's head. He has been examining young Miss's head for a long time. I think that's why he asked if we invited the Misty Hall's people. Chiu Tong added, moreover, if he suspects the people from Serene Peak, you are also new to Serene Peak, so he will probably suspect you too. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and said with a smile, Sister Chiu Tong, you don't have to worry about this. I'm just a small character in the pill repository hall. Even if I walk in front of Divine Dr. Tang, he might not even look at me. Chiu Tong was relieved and said, that's good. However, you still have to be careful. She then sighed and said, sigh, Divine Dr. Tang is already the most skilled doctor in Lingxiang Peak. If even he can't do it, do we have to ask the hierarch for help? But this is not an injury or an internal injury. Even if the hierarch comes, what can he do? Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat when she heard this. She thought to herself, if the hierarch or other elders who have cultivated the immortal Tao come, won't they be able to see through the acupoints I sealed on young Miss's head? This, however, she immediately denied it. If I'm afraid that the people of Lingxiang Peak will see through my identity as an immortal Tao cultivator, and I don't care about young Miss's life, then how can I call myself Xiaoxia? She then reminded Chiu Tong, Sister Chiu Tong, if the hierarch or anyone from Lingxiang Peak asks about this acupoint, just say that you don't know. Don't worry, Xiaohua. I didn't even say anything about Divine Dr. Tang, let alone the others. Chiu Tong said seriously, but young Miss's condition today is similar to yesterday. Do you think Divine Dr. Tang is exaggerating? Zhang Xiaohua had already seen it before, so she nodded. And I think so too. Young Miss can delay it for a dozen days without any problems. Will you be able to find the pills after a dozen days? Chiu Tong was still worried. Definitely. Zhang Xiaohua nodded firmly. After leaving O Yan's place, Zhang Xiaohua did not return to the Misty Hall. Instead, he went straight to the pill room and carefully looked after the pill furnace. Oh Yin did not have much time left, and this furnace of pills was the only method Zhang Xiaohua knew of to save her life. If the pills were ruined, Zhang Xiaohua would not have the time to refine a second furnace. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly remembered that he had two 8 trigrams purple gold furnaces. If he refined the pills together, wouldn't he have a better chance of success? However, this thought disappeared in a flash. He only had half of his true qi left, and refining one furnace of spirit awakening pills took a lot of effort. How could he spare the energy to refine a second furnace at the same time? Instead of being distracted, he might ruin the 2 furnaces of pills. It was better to focus on refining the first furnace of pills. Zhang Xiaohua sat on the futon and closed his eyes to comprehend the Tao of talismans. From time to time, he would release his divine sense to look at the medicinal liquid in the furnace. The fusion of the medicinal liquid was similar to that of the previous pills. It was a little dangerous at the beginning, but the process was stable. In the afternoon, Zhang Xiaohua remembered what he told Zhang Xiaohu yesterday. Should he bring He Tianshu to his backyard? Seeing that everything was normal in the furnace, Zhang Xiaohua made a hand seal and went straight to the front mountain of Shixin Peak. This time, Zhang Xiaohua did not show himself. He only released his divine sense to determine the direction. He went straight to Zhang Xiaohu's small courtyard. Seeing that there was no one else in the courtyard, he jumped out. Using his divine sense, he saw Zhang Xiaohua sitting on the bed, and the other person sitting on a recliner. Wasn't that He Tianshu? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and thought, didn't I make it clear yesterday? If we were to meet in the small room in the backyard, I wouldn't need to see anyone. I only asked second brother to come. Why is Captain He still in this room today? At this time, He Tianshu laughed and said, Marshal Nishang, are you done joking? This morning, you came to find me and said that you haven't seen me for a long time and wanted to talk to me. You can say whatever you want, but why did you have to send me here? You only said a few words and asked me if I wanted to heal my joints and meridians. I thought you were running a fever and talking nonsense, but you still want me to wait here for your helper? Hee hee, if you can heal your joints and meridians, why don't you heal your own injuries first? I heard from the disciples that your ethereal divine art has no more internal energy. Why are you practicing the Yuhuan Sutra now? That is the Xiangxiang Sutra taught women to practice. I've been waiting for a whole day. Where's your helper? Besides Chang'e and Chinchun, who else can help you? He Tianshu laughed and said, You're also clever. Chang'e was actually tricked by you. Oh, right. What benefits did you get in the Yulong Grand Canyon? You actually made some whitening elixir? I say, you're not a disciple of our pharmaceutical hall. Why are you making elixirs? You're wasting medicinal herbs for no reason. Listening to He Tianshu's nagging, Zhang Xiaohu was speechless. He anxiously looked outside the door. This Zhang Xiaohua always came at noon. Why did she come so late today? Yes, it was not easy for him to trick He Tianshu into coming here. He also painted a big picture for him. He just wanted to wait for Zhang Xiaohua to come and treat him. If he didn't come, how could he treat him? Zhang Xiaohua listened carefully outside the room, and she already understood a little. She could not help but smile. Second brother's move is really amazing. I'll be his assistant, and he'll be the main physician. No one can see any flaws in his plan. He's really cunning. I didn't even think about it. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua quickly walked in with a smile on her face. She said loudly, Captain He, long time no see. How have you been? Captain He? He Tianshu was stunned. He didn't know how many years he hadn't used this title. When he got up and saw Zhang Xiaohua quickly approaching, he couldn't help but be stunned. His right hand drooped on the recliner and slightly raised a finger. He said in surprise, You, Zhang Xiaohua? Then he looked up and down. Are you Zhang Xiaohua? Why do you look exactly like him a few years ago? Zhang Xiaohua walked closer and bowed deeply. That's me, Captain He. I'm Zhang Xiaohua from Huanxi Manor. How is this possible? He Tianshu still couldn't believe it. He turned to look at Zhang Xiaohu and said, Marshal nephew Zhang Xiaohu, is he the helper you mentioned? Is he really your younger brother, Zhang Xiaohua? Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, That's him. There's no doubt about it. But didn't you say that he... Oh, but this... He Tianshu mumbled a few words and believed it. No matter how tall he was, why did his face not change? Why was it not the yin and yang that he had imagined? Since his second brother had said so, what was there to hesitate about? After thinking for a moment, He Tianshu asked, Zhang Xiaohua, do you still only know that set of messy fist techniques? -3. Chapter 764. Zhang Xiaohua's heart warmed up. He immediately remembered that he was still an ignorant country boy back then, pestering He Tianshu to teach him fist techniques in the open space of Huanxi Mountain Villa. He Tianshu had taught him many times in a row, but he would forget the scene after a night. At that time, not only He Tianshu, Nier and the rest, even he himself thought that he was a useless martial artist and was not suitable to practice fist techniques. Of course, after so many years of experience, he discovered the power of the Big Dipper magical fist and its unclear effects. Zhang Xiaohua also vaguely understood why he had forgotten many moves back then and only remembered a few. In the end, these moves formed a perfect fist technique, a fist technique that could refine the bones of the whole body. It could even be said that this was the ancestor of all the fist techniques in the pugilistic world. All the fist techniques evolved from the moves of the Big Dipper magical fist. All of this started from He Tianshu teaching Zhang Xiaohua arhat fist move by move. At that time, what kind of spirit did He Tianshu have? And now? He was lying lazily on the chair, unable to move his limbs. Although his face was full of surprise, it could not hide the decadence in his eyes. Zhang Xiaohua walked a few steps and came to He Tianshu's side. He squatted down and said, Yes, Captain He, you still remember? I thought you had forgotten about my scandal back then. He Tianshu smiled and said, He, how could I forget? Although I don't specialize in teaching the medicine hall disciples martial arts, I have taught dozens of people martial arts, but I have never seen anyone as stupid as you. The arhat fist is the simplest fist technique in the pugilistic world. Even a 5 or 6-year-old child from the Young Eagle Hall would be able to do it pretty well after watching it a few times. But you cough. At this point, He Tianshu could not help but cough. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and held his hand. He put his finger on his pulse and said, Until now, I still don't know why. You don't know. Later on, I tried to practice the arhat fist again, but it was still the same. However, the sword technique is still okay and I can't forget it. Besides, how many disciples in the pugilistic world are as stupid as me? You're lucky to have met me. Haha. He Tianshu coughed and laughed. But things are different now. Even if I know all kinds of fist techniques, I won't be your opponent. You can defeat me with just one finger. Cough. Even if you are not my match now, even if your martial arts are better in the future and you can defeat me, you are still my enlightened teacher. You can't escape this title even if you want to. Of course, the premise is that you are willing to admit that you are the enlightened teacher of this stupid disciple of mine. With a smile, Zhang Xiaohua lifted her finger from his wrist, patted his palm, and said, TSK. He Tianshu smacked his lips with a yearning look on his face. Back then, when I learned martial arts, I didn't think it was that great. But when I lost it, I realized that being able to move, fight, and jump around was really a free and easy thing to do. Sigh, that's right. Back then, you were quite talented in practicing the ethereal steps. It was much better than fist techniques. How are you now? Yes, Captain He is right. What you have now is the most precious thing to you. It is the easiest thing to overlook. Although you can't move now and can't practice martial arts, you can still watch the sunrise and sunset, and watch the flowers bloom and wither. There are many people in the pharmacy with you. Can't they even enjoy this? Zhang Xiaohua didn't answer the question about the ethereal steps. Instead, she changed the topic. Sigh, that's right. Let's not talk about the others. Just the few people who were with you in the Huanxi manor. At this point, He Tianshu became even more depressed. Zhang Xiaohu said in a deep voice, Martial Uncle He, the past is the past. Perhaps memories can only give us more motivation to move forward. We can only live better and rebuild the Misty School. Only then can we be worthy of sect leader O and our dead brothers. He Tianshu's eyes flashed and he said with a smile, Xiaohu's words are very encouraging now. Listening to his tone, he is close to Zhang Chengyue. Martial Uncle He, please don't joke with that disciple. Martial Uncle Zhang is a dragon among men. He is the eldest disciple of our Misty School's headmaster. He is not on the same level as me. He Tianshu narrowed his eyes and said, people can change. The level of martial arts is not a problem. As long as the opportunity is there, even a chick can become a phoenix. Oh, all right, let's not talk about it. Didn't you want to give me a surprise and let me return to how I was before? Your precious brother's helper is already here. Why aren't you making a move? Zhang Xiaohu looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, send Martial Uncle He to the small house at the back. I will be there in a while. Zhang Xiaohua also said in a serious manner, okay, do you need me to prepare anything? No need. Just send Martial Uncle He over. I will bring some things over. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and stood up. He smiled and said, Captain He, sit tight. As he spoke, he grabbed the two ends of the reclining chair. Without using much strength, he lifted He Tianshu up along with the chair and walked out of the house with ease. He Tianshu was flabbergasted. He already knew that Zhang Xiaohua was strong, but he was still surprised that Zhang Xiaohua could lift him up as if he was holding a feather. He couldn't help but ask in a low voice, Zhang Xiaohua, your arms can lift a few 100 kilograms of stone? Zhang Xiaohua was a little hesitant. He didn't want to lie to He Tianshu, but he didn't want to expose his strength. He only said vaguely, actually, it's not that I don't want to tell Captain He. I haven't lifted any stone weights in a long time. It should be a lot more than before. Yes, that's not bad. You are strong, so your fist techniques don't need to be too complicated. Your messy fist techniques are the most suitable. I forgot that your second brother asked when one high for an inner force cultivation method called reckless bull force for you. How is your cultivation going? Zhang Xiaohua sighed. Captain He is wise. This disciple doesn't seem to be suitable for cultivating martial arts. To be honest, this reckless bull force only allows me to sense qi. I haven't made much progress in the past few years. Yes, this is also within my expectations. Don't be discouraged. Only 4 or 5 years have passed. You still have a long life ahead of you. Just cultivate slowly. You just have to remember that, as long as you work hard, you can grind an iron rod into a needle. There is nothing in this world that cannot be done. Zhang Xiaohua nodded her head and said, that's right. I hope, Captain, he can set a good example for your disciple. Good. Even if my limbs are crippled and my inner force is crippled, I still know more than you. Since I am able to meet you again, I will teach you martial arts in the future. Oh right, you don't know. After you left, I have comprehended a lot of the ethereal steps. If there is a chance in the future, I will pass it all to you. He Tianshu looked at Zhang Xiaohua affectionately and said, that's great. Captain He, I have been wanting to cultivate the ethereal steps for the past few years, but I just couldn't find the trick. Now that I have met you, the heavens have given me a chance. Please don't think that I am stupid in the future. Don't say that, don't say that. The clumsy bird flies first. It doesn't mean that you won't be able to achieve great things. Oh right, actually, with your great strength and weak inner force cultivation, you can consider cultivating the outer sex cultivation method. You can follow Shernyo's cultivation path. Yes, Shernyo is now like me, but he is even more unbearable. If you can get his guidance, not only will it be your fortune, but it will also give him a little hope. Sure. Martial Uncle, is he still drinking? Zhang Xiaohua hesitated for a moment and asked. Sigh, yes, with Martial Uncle Su. Martial Uncle Su? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. Who was this person? Just as she was about to ask, they had already arrived at the door of the small house in the backyard. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Captain He, let's go in first and wait for my second brother. So what if we wait for a year or so? I want to see what kind of miraculous technique Zhang Xiaohu has. Oh right, Zhang Xiaohua, is your second brother confident? He has been in Shishine Peak for so many years, but I have never seen him say that he has some ability after coming back from the Yulon Grand Canyon. Zhang Xiaohua was amused. She still had to think about it, but he suddenly said the answer. Therefore, he climbed up the pole and nodded. Maybe. I also met him in the Yulon Grand Canyon. At that time, he was extremely brave and saved me from a group of wild beasts. He might have had some fortuitous encounter. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to joke about Captain He's injuries. You also went to the Yulong Grand Canyon? He Tianshu asked curiously. Oh right. Why did you come to the fragrant cult? I was so happy to see you just now that I forgot to ask. This. Zhang Xiaohua was about to answer when she heard Zhang Xiaohu at the door say, Xiaohua came to the fragrant cult to find me. His story is very long. You two can slowly talk about it after Martial Uncle He's injury is healed. We don't have much time now, so it's better to hurry up. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said with a smile, My second brother is right. Captain He, we have a lot of time in the future, so let's talk about it slowly. He Tianshu smiled and nodded. Zhang Xiaohu walked in front of He Tianshu and glanced at Zhang Xiaohua. He bowed his head and said, Martial Uncle He, disciple will tell you the truth. Disciple is not proficient in this healing technique, and I don't have full confidence. It's just that, seeing our Misty School's martial uncles dispersing their cultivation, I feel very uncomfortable. Since Disciple knows this technique, if Disciple doesn't treat them, how can Disciple face you? You mean, I can practice? He Tianshu immediately understood what Zhang Xiaohu meant. Yes, Martial Uncle He, you're right. Your meridians and dantian were damaged, and your joints were also crushed. This is the most serious injury. If you can be cured, then the injuries of the other martial uncles will not be a problem. If that's the case, why don't you pick your master, Wen Hai? He Tianshu said curiously. -3. Chapter 765. Zhang Xiaohu didn't avoid it and said in a low voice, My master is a direct disciple of the Misty School. There must be a lot of spies on Shirxin Peak watching him. Not to mention that I don't have confidence now, even if I do. If my master disappears from his courtyard for a few days, or if his injuries have any obvious changes, wouldn't the spies on Lingxiang Peak be aware of it? You're right. Even the spies I've been keeping an eye on have only gradually disappeared in the past 2 years. If your master had made any movements, it would have been immediately known to others. However, if you have confidence, won't you treat your master? Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly. Martial Uncle He, what are you saying? Isn't it because I wanted to treat Martial Uncle's injuries that I tried my best? If it can be treated, of course, I will treat him. However, before I know the effect, everything is just empty talk. Well, who asked me to be the most seriously injured, but also the most insignificant? He Tianshu nodded and said, Of course, I have to promise you. Zhang Xiaohu was overjoyed and said, However, I have already said the risks. If it can't be cured, you can't blame me. You little brat, I'm already like this. Even if you can't cure me, what can you do? Even if you want my life, if I can learn a little from it, I will die in peace. Zhang Xiaohua immediately smiled and said, Since second brother dares to call Captain He, naturally you have some confidence. You don't have to worry about life and death. Hearing Zhang Xiaohua say so, Zhang Xiaohu also smiled and said, See, Martial Uncle He, this is what your favorite disciple said. He is quite confident in me. To hell with his talent. Even if you want me to take him in, I wouldn't want him. Besides, he's your younger brother. If he doesn't speak to you, why would he speak to me? He Tianshu pretended to be angry. Zhang Xiaohua didn't mind and said, Second brother, I heard you say that in order to realign the joints that have already healed, you need to crush the joints again. Isn't it too painful? Do you want to seal Captain He's acupoints? You're right. Martial Uncle He, please forgive me. I have to seal your acupoints to avoid your pain, and also to avoid being discovered by Lingxiang Peak spies. He Tianshu didn't want to seal his acupoints, but the pain of his joints being crushed was too unbearable. He also didn't want to suffer a second time. He only nodded and said, I hope you can succeed. Don't let me suffer a second time. Okay, then I'll offend you. Zhang Xiaohu slowly walked to He Tianshu's side and extended a finger. Using a very shallow amount of internal energy, he tapped on He Tianshu's acupuncture point. Seeing He Tianshu close his eyes, Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, All right, my act as a cheat is over. It's time for the main character to come on stage. Zhang Xiaohua didn't hold back. She extended her index and middle fingers and randomly sealed all of He Tianshu's major acupoints. Zhang Xiaohu felt a wave of dizziness. He couldn't help but ask, Xiaohua, you? What kind of acupoint sealing technique is this? Enchanting finger. Zhang Xiaohua replied, if you want to learn it, I'll teach you later. We'll talk about it later. I still haven't finished learning the acupoint sealing techniques from Misty School. I'll talk about it when I have time. Oh, right, Xiaohua. Last night I circulated the Ethereal Divine Art and Yuhuan Sutra for 36 times. I feel that my progress is much faster than just cultivating the Ethereal Divine Art. Do you think there's a risk of qi deviation? Zhang Xiaohua pondered for a moment and said, it shouldn't be, because you already had nearly 30 years of cultivation. Your Dantian was destroyed by Zhaojian, but your Dantian was immediately repaired by the Meridian Nourishing Pill. Just take it that you didn't cultivate your internal strength for a few days. It should be normal for your cultivation speed to be fast now. Moreover, you still have the medicinal power of the Meridian Nourishing Pill and Yuhuan Pill in your body. They were refined when you were cultivating, so of course the internal strength produced is more than before. By the way, don't take the second Yuhuan Pill for the time being. You can take it when you have mastered the 2 different types of internal strength and can control it freely. When you take it, you must call me. Okay, I think the new Deputy Hall Master of Lingxiang Peak will be here soon. I should study the nameless breathing method you gave me more. Don't let others see any flaws at once. Second brother is right. Tell second sister-in-law and Chen Chun not to reveal any flaws. After Zhang Xiaohua finished speaking, she carried He Tianshu to the bed that had already been made. She took off his clothes and used her hands and divine sense to check his joints that had been crushed earlier. She sighed and said, it's still a little late. If he was like you and second sister-in-law, he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble to use the bone-solidifying pill as soon as he was injured. Now that they have grown strong, I have no choice but to crush them. Sigh, crush them. Don't be soft-hearted. The fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the cold. If you don't suffer a little, how can you regain your freedom? Zhang Xiaohu advised. And Zhang Xiaohua nodded and closed her eyes. She released her divine sense and crushed all of He Tianshu's joints that had grown strong, but could not be used from head to toe. Although He Tianshu's acupoints had been sealed, large beads of sweat still dripped down from his forehead. Even his entire body was covered in fine beads of sweat. Sigh. Even our Zhang Xiaohua and Xiaoxia's foreheads were covered in a thin layer of sweat. After all, this method of crushing joints was used on the enemy. It was still a little heartache to use it on someone familiar. After the time it took to eat a meal, Zhang Xiaohua straightened her back, opened her eyes, and twisted her neck. Zhang Xiaohu asked with concern, how is it? Fortunately, the first step was not a big mistake. All of the injured joints have been crushed. Sigh. This work is really not for humans. Why didn't it take much effort to crush other people's joints in the past? While muttering, Zhang Xiaohua asked, second sister-in-law, have you found the splints I asked you to find? They're over there. They're under the hay. As Zhang Xiaohu spoke, he walked over and took out several splints and cloth belts. He asked, should I put them on Martial Uncle He now? Zhang Xiaohua shook her head. There's no hurry. Let me apply the bone-congealing pill on him first. As he spoke, he took out a jade bottle from his bosom and poured out a few elixirs. His true energy flowed through the elixirs and turned them into elixirs. Then, he spread the elixirs evenly on the joints that He Tianshu had just crushed. After that, he took the splint and cloth from Zhang Xiaohu and tied the joints firmly. After that, she put on He Tianshu's clothes and turned to Zhang Xiaohu, second brother, Captain He's joints have been fixed. Before he recovers, we can only let him lie here alone. He mustn't move casually. If they grow out of place, we'll have to crush them again. If we crush too many joints, even the bone-congealing pill might not be able to restore them to their original state. Yes, don't worry about that. I've already told the disciple who serves him to accompany me here. I'll let him go when I recover. That disciple is from our Misty School, so he knows what to say and what not to say. Okay. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and walked to the front of the bed. She sat down and took out another bottle of pills. She poured out a pill and placed it in He Tianqu's mouth. A faint medicinal fragrance wafted out and immediately dispersed in the small room. Zhang Xiaohu could smell it clearly. It was the bone-congealing pill that he had used earlier. When the bone-congealing pill dissolved in He Tianqu's body, Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to delay. She circulated her true energy and sent the pill's medicinal properties through He Tianqu's blood vessels to every joint in his body. The medicinal power of the bone-solidifying pill and a sliver of starlight that Zhang Xiaohua did not know where it came from left behind a small amount of starlight. Every time it passed through a joint, a small amount would be left behind. At a speed that was not visible to the naked eye or divine sense, the small bone-solidifying pill that Zhang Xiaohua had applied on the outside of the joint also repaired the joint from the outside. The small bone-solidifying pill that Zhang Xiaohua had applied on the outside of the joint also repaired the joint from the outside. While evenly distributing the medicinal properties of the bone-congealing pill, Zhang Xiaohua also discovered a magical use of true energy. Immortal true energy wasn't the same as martial inner qi. It could only circulate within the meridians. Even if the true energy left the meridians, it could still circulate within the body. The medicinal properties of the bone-congealing pill were directly sent into the bones of the joints using true energy. It was much more direct and effective than using other methods to reach the joints through oral ingestion. Even so, it took a lot of effort for Zhang Xiaohua to send the appropriate medicinal properties to He Tianqu's joints. After an unknown amount of time, Zhang Xiaohua felt a trace of exhaustion before she finally completed the most important step. Zhang Xiaohua opened her eyes and smiled tiredly at Zhang Xiaohu, who was standing quietly at the side. He didn't dare to make a sound. "Second brother, I've already consumed the bone-congealing pill. From the looks of it, everything is normal. Let me rest for a while. We'll talk later." After she finished speaking, she closed her eyes and silently circulated the god's guidance to recover her exhausted divine sense. After a long time, she opened her eyes and smiled. "All right, second brother. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. I've already sent the medicinal properties to all of Team Leader He's joints. This bone-congealing pill is very useful for your and second sister-in-law's injuries. Logically speaking, Team Leader He's injuries should be able to heal as well. Even if he doesn't fully recover, I think he should be able to move like a normal person?" Zhang Xiaohu nodded solemnly and said, "I hope so. As long as he can move like a normal person, I think senior uncle he will be very happy. Moreover, the hundreds of disciples in our Misty school can see hope for the future." "What? Hundreds of disciples?" Zhang Xiaohua asked in surprise. "Why are there so many?" Zhang Xiaohu glanced at Zhang Xiaohua and said, "This is only a small number. In addition, there are more than 1,000 disciples whose dantian was damaged and their inner strength was crippled. Do you think that our Misty school is the same as the evil tiger gang in Pingyang City? Is it just a small gang?" "It's just that." Zhang Xiaohua touched her nose and smiled bitterly. "With your brother's 2 hands, I don't know when he will be able to save more than 1,000 people." As she spoke, He Tianqiu, who was lying on the bed, seemed to be in extreme pain. His limbs were twitching and large beads of sweat were dripping down his forehead. -3. Chapter 766. When Zhang Xiaohua saw He Tianqiu's painful appearance, he was immediately shocked. When he gave the universal pill to Zhang Xiaohu the day before yesterday, he took on everything and thought that he had absolute confidence. In the end, if he hadn't thought of the method to dissolve the liquid, he didn't know what the consequences would have been. Therefore, when he saw He Tianqiu's appearance, Zhang Xiaohua thought that he had done something wrong again. He immediately floated forward and poured his true qi into He Tianqiu's body. Then, he released his divine sense. But just as Zhang Xiaohua's true qi entered He Tianqiu's meridians, He Tianqiu let out a long breath. His limbs relaxed and were limp on the side. Zhang Xiaohua frowned. After checking with true qi and divine sense, there was nothing unusual about the joints that had just been crushed. Then, he checked the rest of the body and found that everything was normal.
Strange.
Zhang Xiaohua frowned. This was the first time that he had treated so many internal injuries in his joints. He didn't have much experience and didn't know why He Tianqiu was like this. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua frowning and holding He Tianxu's arm for a long time without letting go, Zhang Xiaohu whispered, Xiaohua, generally, treatment and medicine are done slowly. Just now, you used your internal force to dissolve the medicinal power of the bone-solidifying pill. Wasn't it too overbearing that his joints couldn't accept it for a while? For example, in the Yulon Grand Canyon, when you helped me dissolve the medicinal power of the meridian-nourishing pill, I almost couldn't control the internal force that increased out of thin air. But Chang'e and Chen Shun dissolved the medicinal power by themselves, so such a thing didn't happen. Moreover, the healing of joints is a painful and itchy process. I often encounter it now, but it feels a little weak. Do you think Martial Uncle he is also in this situation? Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, That's right. Step by step is the way of the king. I may be a little impatient by pulling up the seedlings to help them grow. If the medicinal power is too strong, the pain will probably double. However, Captain He's joints have been growing wrongly for so many years. It won't be good if I don't use heavy medicine. I hope he can endure it. After thinking for a while, he said, In order to prevent any accidents from happening to Captain He, I will not be able to understand his acupoints. Let's see how it goes tomorrow. All right. Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said, I'll come over often. Oh, that's right. This acupoint will automatically unseal after 24 hours. You have to come earlier. I don't have enough internal energy right now, so I probably won't be able to seal Martial Uncle He's acupoint for too long. Zhang Xiaohua smiled mysteriously and said proudly, It's not that I'm looking down on second brother, but you don't need to touch this acupoint. Moreover, it won't open automatically for 24 hours. This point of view was far beyond Zhang Xiaohu's understanding. He couldn't help but ask curiously, Quick, tell me, what's going on? Damn, Zhang Xiaohua curled her lips and said, You really don't know anything. This is your brother's acupoint. Ah, Zhang Xiaohu said gloomily, Is it that simple? Yeah. I don't think there are many people in the world who can unseal the acupoint that I sealed. Even if it's 24 hours, it won't automatically unseal. Zhang Xiaohu immediately said with a calm face, Xiaohua, is this the bewitching finger that you were talking about? Hee, I didn't understand. You said you were going to teach it to me. Cough, cough. I'm bored these 2 days. If you have time, I don't mind teaching it to you. Don't. My bewitching finger isn't some misty school's secret technique. You should learn from your master first. I'm still waiting to teach it to my own disciple. Your disciple? Zhang Xiaohu didn't seem to laugh out loud and said, Look at how old you are, and you're already thinking about having a disciple. It's better for your second brother to take advantage of others. Looking at her second brother's shameless appearance, what else could Zhang Xiaohua say? She only rolled her eyes and said, This bewitching finger requires a person's internal energy. Wait until your internal injuries have healed, and you've recovered to the same level as when you were in the Yulon Grand Canyon. Then I'll raise your internal energy to a higher level before we talk about this finger technique. Damn, Zhang Xiaohu said. Then why are you still talking about it? You're making my heart itch. Zhang Xiaohua laughed and took out the bewitching finger manual from her bosom. She threw it into his arms and said, Look at your appearance. When it comes to martial arts, you seem to be more anxious than when you see second sister-in-law. Here, I'll give it to you now so that you won't bother me every day. Huh. Zhang Xiaohu was stunned. He opened the bewitching finger manual and carefully looked at it. He asked curiously, Xiaohua, when did you become so generous? This can't be fake, right? You? Zhang Xiaohua was greatly embarrassed and acted as if she wanted to snatch it. You're still pretending to be innocent after getting a bargain. When did I have a second brother who doesn't understand his younger brother as well as you? Zhang Xiaohu hid it in his bosom and didn't even look at it. He said mysteriously, Xiaohua, tell me honestly, where did you get this manual? Second brother is telling you, as the saying goes, if you don't borrow a book, you can't read it. In the future, you should borrow more books like this. Is that so? Zhang Xiaohua glanced at him and said, Then when I have time, I'll go to your Misty School's library pavilion and borrow it to read. Don't, Zhang Xiaohu said with a nervous face. Isn't the library pavilion our family's own? Do you still need to borrow it? It's better to borrow it from someone else. Hee hee, Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, "This book was taken from your Misty School's library pavilion. When did you go to the library pavilion? Or did Bosso ask you to go there?" Zhang Xiaohu asked curiously, but then his eyes turned and he thought of something and said, You went to the Righteous Alliance's territory?" Zhang Xiaohua laughed again and patted second brother's shoulder, saying, "Isn't that our family's back garden? I've always wanted to go there. Back then, Bosso was there, so I was really embarrassed. Now that there's a change of people, why should I be polite with them? This enchanting finger was borrowed from there. How satisfying! How satisfying! I really need to read it." Zhang Xiaohu laughed. "Ha ha ha! Ha ha ha!" Zhang Xiaohua said seriously, "Second brother, you can practice this secret manual. Second sister-in-law and Chen Chun can also practice it, but it's better not to spread it. This thing is probably the precious treasure of the Righteous Alliance. If too many people practice it, it will be discovered by the Righteous Alliance. It's not good for you and me. Also, I'm going to leave this secret manual to my disciple. You have to return it to me in the future." I know. Isn't it your disciple? Who knows where he is? When you find him, I'll definitely give it to you." Zhang Xiaohu waved his hand and seemed to be very nervous. It was impossible for Zhang Xiaohua to find any disciple in the next few years. Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. Her second brother really knew her well. The immortal inheritance was extraordinary. She was just a beginner and did not have the ability to accept any disciples. "Let's go, second brother. It's getting late. You're not going to mend Master He's meridians?" Zhang Xiaohu asked in surprise. "Well, Captain He's situation, it's better to observe for a few more days. I'm afraid something will go wrong if I rush for success. I don't want to add more feet to the snake." Zhang Xiaohua's face was full of lingering fear. "Well, that's it for now. Are you going back to the small courtyard of the Pill Tower Hall?" "Well, I haven't been back for a few days. I have to go and see if there's anything wrong." Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, "You go first, second brother. I'll go out soon." "Oh, what can happen to you there?" "It's just a place where the disciples of the Misty Hall practice their martial arts." Zhang Xiaohu sneered and then led the way out. When they reached the door, he laughed and said, "Did no one cause trouble for you these few days?" But no one said anything. Zhang Xiaohu only turned around and said, Why is there no sign of her?" Zhang Xiaohu was very surprised. He looked around and really did not see anyone. He had to test the waters and said, "Xiaohua? Xiaohua, where are you? Are you still playing cat and mouse with me? Don't mess around, you'll kill me." Unfortunately, only He Tianshu was lying on the bed in the whole room and no one answered his question. Zhang Xiaohu scratched his head and thought, "This Xiaohua is really good at playing cat and mouse. I don't know how she ran away. Amazing." Zhang Xiaohua used the earth escape art to find a quiet place. Then, he pretended to admire the azaleas as he walked towards the small house in the Pill Repository Hall. It was already dusk and smoke was rising. The flowers and trees of the Shershin Peak were covered in a layer of red and gray under the setting sun. It looked delicate and beautiful, but also a little sad. When she was about to reach the small courtyard, a man suddenly jumped down from a big tree in the distance. He was frowning and looked at her with a hateful face. Zhang Xiaohua was looking at the scenery and did not release her divine sense. She was startled when the man jumped down. Looking at the man's muscular appearance, she immediately pretended to be afraid and said timidly, "Hero, this little one has no money. You're robbing me like this, you're wrong." When the man heard this, he almost fell down. He looked at his empty hands, his face full of sweat, and said in an evil voice, "You little brat from the Tuidan Hall, which eye of yours thinks your grandpa is an evil man who would rob you? How can you frame grandpa for no reason? Be careful. I'll go to the Pill Tower Hall and sue you for slander." Zhang Xiaohua's face was full of fear. He looked left and right, up and down. After a long while, he said, "Hero has come out. This attire is from the Misty Hall. Oh, and he doesn't have an axe. Otherwise, he would be the same as the bandits I met earlier." The man was completely defeated. He took 2 steps forward and said, "Grandpa is not here to rob you today. Bah, I've never robbed anyone before, and I won't in the future." Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, "Then what are you here for?" Grandpa wants to vent his anger on you," the man said as he reached out his big hand to grab Zhang Xiaohua's neck. Zhang Xiaohua frowned. He didn't mind beating this man down, but the problem was that he was a gentleman, and he was Xiaoxia. He had to be polite before resorting to force. He had to ask for the reason. If there was any misunderstanding and second brothers, martial brothers, were hurt, it wouldn't be good. -3. Chapter 767. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua dodged the man's palm and said with a smile, "Sir, even if you want to find trouble with me, you should at least give me a reason. Even if it's groundless, you should at least let me know. You're trying to get physical with me right from the start. This doesn't seem to be the fine tradition of your Misty Hall. You're just a bastard from the Pill Tower Hall. Of course, I know what you've done. If you hadn't offended my junior sister of the Misty Hall, how would I have thought of finding trouble with you? You should know it yourself by patting your chest." This guy's mouth was immoral, but he immediately pointed out the reason he was here. It was because of the junior sister that Zhang Xiaohua had offended. Zhang Xiaohua sighed helplessly. Speaking of offending the junior sisters of the Misty Hall, which one of them hadn't been smeared with Zhang Xiaohu's bathwater? Who knew which one this burly man was talking about? Of course, this wasn't a reason for Zhang Xiaohua to sigh. This was a secret that Zhang Xiaohua and his brother strictly guarded. Even Chang'e didn't know about it. So how could this burly man know? What Zhang Xiaohua sighed was, "It's understandable that you want to win the favor of your junior sister, but you can't vent your anger on me. It's really immoral to build the happiness of the two of you on my pain." Zhang Xiaohua was also depressed and unconsciously labeled them as a moral couple. She thought to herself, "It's fine if you two are jealous, but why do you have to drag me into it? Could it be that you can only show your masculinity by bullying an outsider like me? Maybe after breaking my arms and legs, he will still try to curry favor with others." The more Zhang Xiaohua thought about it, the angrier she got. She couldn't stand those who bullied the weak. Now that this burly man was bullying her, who was obviously a minor disciple of the Pill Tower Hall, she was even angrier. At this moment, the burly man changed his grip into a fist, and a big fist smashed towards Zhang Xiaohua's face. How can this be? When Zhang Xiaohua heard the wind from the punch, he knew that the man had used 80% of his strength. If it was an ordinary disciple of the Pill Repository Hall, he wouldn't be able to dodge it and might even be crippled. Thus, he didn't reply. He had a plan in mind and stretched out his fist, placing it in the direction of the man's fist. He didn't dodge or use any strength. The man frowned slightly, but his eyes were filled with a smile. The momentum of his fist did not decrease in the slightest as it directly smashed towards Zhang Xiaohua's small and skinny fist. To be honest, even though he had used 80% of his strength, he still had some strength left. If Zhang Xiaohua was unable to dodge it, he would not dare to smash his fist on her head as it could easily kill her. All he wanted was to teach Zhang Xiaohua a lesson and win a smile from the beauty. Now that he saw Zhang Xiaohua calmly punching him, he thought that breaking the bones of this annoying disciple of the Pill Repository Hall wouldn't incur any punishment from the law enforcement disciples of the Ethereal Hall, right? Just as the burly man's junior sister's smile blossomed, he heard the expected sound of his fingers breaking. Before his smile could blossom, it was immediately strangled by the immense pain from his fist. Ouch! The man couldn't help but cry out in pain as he held his injured right hand. He stared at Zhang Xiaohua in astonishment and said, You. After saying you for a long time, he still couldn't say anything. Zhang Xiaohua glanced at the man's fingers and knew that a few of them were broken. It was only a slight piercing pain, and it was much lighter than the injuries she suffered at the Lotus Flower Escort Agency. The corner of her mouth curled up as she scolded, "Uncle, how do you feel? Do you feel that you deserve it?" The man seemed to be still pondering why his fist had smashed into something as hard as a rock and not an ordinary person's fist like he had imagined. Therefore, he didn't answer for a moment. Seeing the man's slow reaction, Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes and smiled. "Uncle, are you the senior brother that Tian was talking about? The one who always strikes up a conversation with her?" Yes. How did you know?" "Nonsense. On the surface, I have offended 2 female disciples of the Misty Hall at second brother's place. One is Xiao Tian Tian, and the other is junior sister E, who has a huge number of pimples on her face. Even if I used my heel to think, the possibility of it being Xiao Tian Tian was very high. Hee, how did this guy get into the Misty School? Don't tell me that they didn't check if he was as stupid as an ox. AI, this young master was incomparably smart, and was even rejected by the Misty School. How did this guy get into the inner circle of the Misty School? The people who recruited disciples back then were really blind. Thinking about how she was rejected by the Lotus Escort Agency and the Misty School, Zhang Xiaohua felt that it was unfair. She couldn't help but have evil thoughts. She smiled and said, "This kind of thing, how could I not know? Tian Tian also told me that she ignored you, but you still showed up in front of her every day or every other day. Although you didn't speak sometimes and only looked at her from behind, she saw it all. She also hinted to you many times, but you didn't understand. Or maybe you didn't want to understand at all." AI, yes, junior sister Xiao, she? Halfway through, the man's face changed dramatically. Ignoring his injured right hand, his left hand pointed at Zhang Xiaohua and roared, "You? How did you know? How can you call her Tian Tian? Say it." Zhang Xiaohua shrugged and said helplessly, "Uncle, have you not studied before? Don't you know that the ancients said, 1,000 miles of marriage is linked by a thread. If fated, 1,000 miles will meet. If not, we will not know each other? Oh, there's also love at first sight." Zhang Xiaohua used all the idioms she knew and looked at the man with a smile that wasn't a smile. How is this possible? How could junior martial sister Xiao take a fancy to a pretty boy like you? The man was both shocked and angry, and his voice was trembling. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and wagged her tail. She almost took out her fan and said sourly, "Beautiful women like little white faces. This is an ancient saying. I think even someone like you who hasn't studied for many days knows this. Tell me, if a female disciple like Tian Tian doesn't like a little white face like me, why would she like a brute like you?" The man almost flew into a rage and was about to punch again, but the moment he moved, it affected the place where his broken bones were, causing it to hurt even more. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "What's more, this little white face is even fiercer than you. Why wouldn't she like me?" When the man heard this, he was so angry that his eyes turned red. He gritted his teeth so hard that they creaked. "That's about it, he." Zhang Xiaohua secretly felt good, but she still said, "What? You don't believe me? What's there to not believe? If Tian Tian wasn't interested in me, why would she tell me about you? If I didn't hear about you, I would know that she was talking about you the moment I saw you. Sigh, if you still don't believe me, I can't do anything about it. Why don't you go ask Tian Tian yourself? Maybe you'll only give up if she tells you personally." After saying this, she looked like she wanted to help but couldn't. Sure enough, the man was fooled. He jumped up high and didn't even remember the pain in his finger. He said, I naturally don't believe it. We have been brother and sister for so many years. How could she possibly fall in love with someone else after seeing you a few times? I will go ask her now." Towards the end, his voice became softer and softer, as if he agreed with Zhang Xiaohua's words of love at first sight. Without waiting for him to finish, he immediately turned around and rushed towards the direction of the Misty Hall. Zhang Xiaohua watched the man's back disappear quickly, and he could vaguely see the commotion for a while. With a smile on his face, he shouted without turning his head, "Senior brother Du, you've been watching this show for a long time. It's time to pay some copper coins." Before he finished speaking, a tall figure floated down from a big tree at the side. With a surprised look on his face, he asked, "Junior brother Ren, when did you discover me? It seems like your eyes have never looked in my direction." Zhang Xiaohua cupped his fists and said, "When senior brother Du came out from the direction of my courtyard, I saw it. However, senior brother Du was unreasonable. At that time, you as his senior brother had yet to make a move, so why didn't you stop him? Don't tell me you like to hide in the tree and watch the two tigers fight? Oh, right. I have been talking to your senior brother for a long time, and I still don't know his name. Is this how the disciples of the Misty Hall are taught? There is no basic etiquette at all." Du Feng's face was a little embarrassed as he licked his lips and said, This senior brother is called Song Hao. His temper is a little rough, but his heart is not bad. Junior brother Ren, please don't lower yourself to his level. Faint. Zhang Xiaohua slapped her forehead. It was said that officials would protect each other, but in this Misty school, it was really everyone who protected each other. She couldn't help but sneer. If your heart is not bad, then you don't tell the reason why you want to grab someone's neck? If you tell the reason, then you hit someone's face with your fist? How could he not have a bad heart at this time? How can I not lower myself to his level? Hee, Du Feng said, Junior brother Ren's martial arts are very strong. Even Lu Xiaogang is not your opponent. This Song Hao probably won't be able to gain any advantage from your hands, so I didn't stop you. Moreover, all the disciples of the Misty Hall know about senior brother Song's temperament. On Shixin Peak, everyone gives him some leeway. If junior brother Ren can teach him a lesson, it may not be a bad thing. Moreover, didn't junior brother Ren teach him a lesson just now? Not only did he make him suffer, but he also instructed him to find junior sister Xiao. Presumably, tomorrow you will see Song Hao with a bloody nose and a swollen face. If I appear, how can I show junior brother Ren's wisdom? Alas, flattery is the only thing that will work. Senior brother Du, I don't dare to answer your words. Did you come to the courtyard to find me to flatter me? Zhang Xiaohua touched her nose and laughed. Of course not. I am looking for junior brother Ren because I have something important to discuss with him. Zhang Xiaohua was surprised. What is it? -3. Chapter 768. Seeing that Du Feng specially came to find him, Zhang Xiaohua was surprised and said, I heard that this pill-expanding hall is a peaceful place. How did I become so popular the moment I came? Could it be that you were all so hospitable in the past? Du Feng cupped his hands and said, Junior brother Ren has been here for a few days. It seems that there are many disciples who have disturbed you. If I have offended you in any way, I would like to apologize to you. Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly supported him and said, one who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. I haven't said anything to you yet, and you are in such a hurry to apologize. Could it be that you have something to ask of me? Being seen through by Zhang Xiaohua, Du Feng's face heated up and he felt a little embarrassed. But soon after, he smiled and said, Actually, it's nothing much. I just want to ask if what you said to junior brother Xiao is true. Junior brother Xiao? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and asked, Who is this person? What did I say to him? Hearing this, the faint joy on Du Feng's face was immediately swept away. He had seen with his own eyes how Zhang Xiaohua had deceived Song Hao. He thought that what he knew was just Zhang Xiaohua casually replying. He could only smile and said, It's that guy who brought a group of young disciples to find trouble with you that day. His name is Xiao Binghe. Zhang Xiaohua slapped his forehead as he remembered. This matter had only happened a few days ago, but Zhang Xiaohua had encountered too many things in the past few days, so he had long forgotten about it. If Du Feng had mentioned Mu Tangchun, he might have immediately thought of it. However, if Xiao Binghe was only mentioned, he naturally did not have much of an impression of him. Zhang Xiaohua said embarrassedly, Senior brother Du, you must be joking. These days, there have been too many people who have come to find trouble with junior brother. Even if I am talented and intelligent, my memory is not clear. With senior martial brother Du's reminder, this little brother remembered. Du Feng was also speechless. Xiao Binghe bringing people to find trouble was wrong. Being ridiculed by Zhang Xiaohua, how could he say anything? His face was slightly red. In the dusk, it was hard to see clearly. He smiled and said, I wonder if what junior brother Ren said that day was true? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, I forgot that this kind of thing should be told to you. Telling them is like playing the lute to a cow. Oh, is senior brother Du talking about the matter of various herbs or the matter of exchanging pills? This is of course the promise that junior brother Ren made that day. Promises? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, My run. At this point, she unconsciously rolled her eyes and smiled, saying softly, Senior brother Du, do you think what I said to them is true? Hearing Zhang Xiaohua's question, Du Feng could not help but secretly sigh. He cupped his hands and said, Since junior brother Ren said so, this one will not ask anymore. Let's go. Our Misty Hall's Vice Hall Master Qin wants to see you. Vice Hall Master Qin? Zhang Xiaohua was shocked and said, "Why does she want to see me? Has she seen all the previous disciples of the Pill Tower Hall?" Du Feng shook his head and said, "Although this deal with the Pill Tower Hall is managed by Vice Hall Master Qin, she is very busy every day. How can she have the leisure to care about this?" This one discussed with the other senior brothers and reported the situation to Vice Hall Master Qin. "It was only because she heard your nonsense that day that she felt it was inconceivable and thought of asking me to ask if it was true." "Oh, I see." Zhang Xiaohua suddenly understood. Since it was not because of other things, and it was not because of Chang'e and Qinchen's report, it must be because of the Misty Hall's business. So she cupped her hands and said, "Since Vice Hall Master Qin thinks so highly of this one, please lead the way. Senior brother, do I also want to admire Vice Hall Master Qin's majesty." "Admire?" Hearing this, Du Feng could not help but smile bitterly and said secretly, "Can this word be used in this way?" However, he just pretended not to hear it and said with a smile, "Junior brother Ren, please follow me." Du Feng led Zhang Xiaohua forward. After a while, they came to a place that Zhang Xiaohua was very familiar with. It was the Misty Hall that Zhang Xiaohua entered when she came to Serene Peak. At this time, there was only Aunt Qin in the Misty Hall. She was sitting on a chair with her head lowered and pondering. When she heard Du Feng's report, she was delighted and asked first, "Did the disciple of the pill-expanding hall agree?" Du Feng shook his head and said helplessly, "He neither admitted nor denied. This disciple doesn't know what he is thinking, but..." Then he told her what he had seen. Hearing this, Aunt Qin frowned and sighed. "The disciple sent by the pill-expanding hall is really extraordinary. I knew it wouldn't be so simple. Let him in." When Zhang Xiaohua followed Du Feng into the Misty Hall, she saw Aunt Qin staring at her. She felt a little scared and went forward to salute. "Disciple on duty of the Pill-Expanding Hall, Ren Xiaoyao, pays his respects to Vice Hall Master Qin." "Oh, Ren Xiaoyao, please get up." Aunt Qin returned the greeting and said, "I wanted to see you for a long time, but there are many things to do in the hall. You saw it the day you arrived. The aftermath of the matter is very complicated, and we have just finished dealing with it." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Vice Hall Master Qin has a heavy responsibility and is working hard for all the disciples of the Misty Hall. You are much busier than a small disciple of the Pill-Expanding Hall like me. I can understand. I can understand." Aunt Qin smiled and said, "I heard from Du Feng that there were many people who want to find trouble with you these few days. Actually, I should have told them earlier. I have caused you to be wronged. I apologize to you here." Zhang Xiaohua quickly stood up and said, "Vice Hall Master Qin, you don't have to be so polite. I am happy that they came to play with me. I am the only one here, and they came to find trouble with me because they were afraid I would be lonely. I am very happy and was about to thank you, but you apologized to me first. I can't accept it. I can't accept it." In fact, he was cursing in his heart. Sigh. It's even easier to say, after aborting the child, "You can see your parents." That's right. The previous disciples of the Pill-Expanding Hall probably didn't receive such treatment. "Nephew Run, you must be joking." Aunt Qin closed the distance between them and said with a smile, "Young disciples are full of vigor. If they meet an expert like Nephew Run, they will also be happy. The two of you can compare notes with each other. It will be a good story between our Serene Peak and Bayou Peak." Zhang Xiaohua listened and smiled without saying anything. Aunt Qin glanced at Zhang Xiaohua and Du Feng and asked casually, "I heard from Du Feng that you promised Xiaobinghe that they would fill all the wastelands in the Serene Peak with herbs, and it would be best if the herbs were the ones that our Misty Hall is short of. You also promised that you would use the most reasonable method to exchange the pills for our herbs. Hee. You also said that during the exchange, they would personally come out and make the decision for you. Is this true?" If it was usual, Zhang Xiaohua would have already agreed and admitted that it was true. But now, seeing Aunt Qin so serious and happy, she didn't know what medicine she was selling in her gourd. How could she dare to agree casually? She only said vaguely, well, it can't be considered as an agreement." It can't be considered as an agreement. I think Deputy Hall Master Qin should know, whether my promise is true or not." When Aunt Qin heard this, she immediately had a look of realization. With a smile, she said, "How can I not know what Nephew Run is thinking? We are all sensible people. Since we have called you here and only Dufeng is present, you don't have to worry about anything. Tell me, how much of the benefits do you want?" Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and said dumbfounded, "What do you mean by how much of the benefits? What is Deputy Hall Master Qin talking about?" Vice Hall Master Qin smiled coldly and said, "Virtuous Nephew Run, it is not good for you to feign ignorance like this. We are all people of the pugilistic world. Since we all know this and I have already asked so clearly, Virtuous Nephew Run, can't you name a price?" Zhang Xiaohua's mind turned quickly. She immediately thought of what Xiao Binghe said that day and understood. She cupped her hands and said sincerely, "Oh, so Deputy Hall Master Qin is talking about this. Actually, I don't have any thoughts. Even if Deputy Hall Master Qin doesn't give me any benefits, I am also willing to." Without waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to finish, Aunt Qin waved her hand and said, "Forget it. Don't put on a sanctimonious face in front of this old lady. I have seen many people like you. In this day and age, if you don't have any benefits for yourself, do you think you can promise so many benefits to our Misty Hall? Such conditions are obviously disadvantageous to our Pill Tower Hall. Aren't you just trying to get more benefits for yourself?" Then, he smiled and said, "Nephew Ren is young and thin-skinned. This hall understands that very well. However, Nephew Ren's methods are vicious and your intentions are experienced. This hall admires you greatly. Speak, how much of the benefits do you want?" Zhang Xiaohua waved her hands and said, "Deputy Hall Master Qin, really? Ha ha ha, you little brat, you're really giving us a hard time. Forget it. I'll tell you the truth. Our Misty Hall can only give you 30% of the benefits. You can consider it yourself and see if it's suitable." 30%? Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. She calculated in her heart. 30% of the benefits meant that she had to keep 3 out of 10 elixirs, while the Misty Hall could only keep 7. Wasn't it too much of a loss for them? Seeing Zhang Xiaohua hesitating, Deputy Hall Master Qin frowned and said, "Nephew Run, you have to think carefully. If you ask for an exorbitant price like the previous ones, even 30% will be gone." Zhang Xiaohua frowned even more. 30% was not a lot, but didn't the previous ones ask for more? 40%? 50%? Seeing Zhang Xiaohua still hesitating, Deputy Hall Master Qin gritted his teeth and said, "Nephew Ren, forget it. You don't have to think about it. 40% is the final price. If you ask for more, you can only end up like your senior brother of the Pill Tower Hall. Let's break up." "No, no." Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly waved her hands and said, I don't." Zhang Xiaohua wanted to say no, but thinking of what Aunt Qin said just now, she had to change her words. "I don't mean that. I just want 10%. "What? 10%? Aunt Qin was surprised. She looked at Dufeng and said, "Nephew Run, don't play with me. Could it be that you want to cheat our Misty Hall with those fake and inferior pills?" -3. Chapter 769. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. He didn't expect that after he was so kind and didn't want any benefits, she would say that he was pretending to be innocent. He took a step back and said that he only wanted 10% of the benefits, but she said that he was using fake and inferior medicinal pills to coax her. Moreover, Aunt Qin kept increasing the benefits she gave to others by 10%, as if she was afraid that others would beat her to it. Could it be that she was afraid that he would ask for too much? Or was she afraid that she wouldn't feel at ease if she didn't take 10% of the benefits? Zhang Xiaohua was speechless. What was wrong with people nowadays? Could it be that it was wrong to live a pure and simple life and pursue a little bit of freedom? Could Juoya, who was different from the rest, only by scheming, using some dirty tricks and playing some dirty tricks? Only then could you gain a trace of arrogance? Sighing, Zhang Xiaohua reluctantly said, "Deputy Hall Master Qin, you're too sensitive. If so, I'll take 20% as a show of sincerity. We'll be on the same side in the future." Aunt Qin still shook her head. "No, at least 30%. I won't feel at ease if it's less. If you come with elixirs that we don't know about, we'll be the ones who get hurt in the end." Trust, trust. Zhang Xiaohua almost looked up to the sky and sighed. The lack of trust in the pill hall directly led to Aunt Qin only using 30% of the benefits to win the hearts of the disciples on duty. Only then could she feel some sense of security in her heart. But where did this trust come from? Cough, cough. Zhang Xiaohua coughed and said, "Let me ask you something that I shouldn't ask. Deputy Hall Master Qin, how much did my senior brothers want before?" Aunt Qin was a little impatient. "Didn't I say just now? There were 50%, 60%, and even 70% last time. Do you all think that our Serene Peak is a medicine field that doesn't need copper coins and only wants to take advantage of our Misty Hall's disciples?" "Hee hee," Aunt Qin said in a somewhat threatening tone. "Perhaps my Misty Hall doesn't have much authority, but we have disciples who aren't afraid of death. I'm sure you know what happened to your senior brothers. Breaking their arms and legs is a common occurrence." Sigh. Zhang Xiaohua also sighed as if she had experienced the vicissitudes of life. She finally understood what Chen Fengxiao and Wu Zhoushu meant when they were at Tianmu Peak. At that time, Zhang Xiaohua only thought that she had caught the eye of Elder Zishan. She had walked around Serene Peak, and it was like a piece of wood being plated with a layer of gold. Although it was still wood on the inside, the surface was gold. The Hall Master would also put her in an important position. But now, it seemed that the position of Serene Peak's guard was really a huge fat job. Think about it. From Aunt Qin's tone, she had already bargained for 40%. If she insisted, it was possible for her to get 50%. Zhang Xiaohua didn't have any idea how many elixirs there were between Serene Peak and Baiyu Peak. But the concept of 50% meant that the amount of elixirs that Zhang Xiaohua received every time was the same as the amount of elixirs used by all the disciples of Serene Peak. What kind of concept was that? Even if one used their heels to think, they would know that it was so fat that it would definitely be blood splashing 3 feet, oil flowing 5 feet. Of course, Zhang Xiaohua wasn't stupid enough to think that she was the one who pocketed the 50% elixirs. Not to mention Elder Zishan, even Deputy Hall Master Su, Yang Yao, and the others would have to rely on her to bribe them. At this time, thinking of Yang Yao's somewhat evasive words, Zhang Xiaohua was even more clear. Poor Misty Hall. Poor Serene Peak. They had no freedom, no autonomy, no resistance, no escape, and could only bear it silently. They could only maintain their fake dignity by flattering the insignificant disciples on duty of Pill Expansion Hall. That dignity could be broken by a single toe of Pill Expansion Hall, and the consequence of that was to break the hands and feet of the disciples on duty. They didn't even dare to take their lives. What about the people behind these disciples on duty? The people of Misty Hall, from Yang Rupiang to Mu Tang Chun, could only look at them with anger in their eyes. They couldn't do anything to them. And then, they could only wait to greet the next disciple on duty with a smiling face. They could only hope that this person would ask for 10% less of the benefits. Therefore, Zhang Xiaohua's anger towards the harassment of the disciples of Misty Hall these days had already disappeared. They were also helpless and just wanted to give her some external pressure, hoping that she wouldn't dare to act recklessly. Alas, in fact, was it useful? If she didn't break the existing pattern and fight for the position of Serene Peak, even if they continued to harass her, as long as she asked for 10% more of the benefits, wouldn't they all make unnecessary sacrifices? But what did she need so many elixirs for? To keep them for herself? The elixirs she refined were many times better than these elixirs. Forget it. She didn't want to develop in Pill Expansion Hall. Let those vampires in Pill Expansion Hall go to hell. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua pondering, Aunt Qin also pondered. After a while, she asked, "What do you think, Nephew Ren?" Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Well, since Aunt Qin gave me so much face, how could I refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit? I'll take the 30% of the benefits." Aunt Qin was incomparably delighted. She didn't expect this disciple on duty to be so easy to talk to. 30% of the benefits was something she had never dreamed of. 40% was her bottom line. If it was 50%, to be honest, she had no choice but to agree. Therefore, she still said in disbelief, "You really only want 30%? Don't you intend to keep some for yourself?" Ha ha ha. Zhang Xiaohua raised her head and laughed. A gentleman keeps his word. Not only that, what I said to Xiao Binghe before was true. When the day of the transaction comes, Just let them come over. Aunt Qin scratched her head, her heart full of astonishment. Xiaobinghe's words were just an excuse for her to let Zhang Xiaohua come over. How could she take it seriously? In her heart, she had already taken Zhang Xiaohua's words as a joke. The process of the transaction was supposed to be decided by the disciple on duty. It was also the process of them doing something fishy. How could they let the disciples of the Misty Hall interfere? Aunt Qin couldn't help but stare at Zhang Xiaohua's somewhat childish face. In fact, it wasn't that she didn't think that this person in front of her was Zhang Xiaohua. After all, they looked too similar. They were exactly the same. But it was because of this that she was very puzzled. How could there be no change after not seeing each other for several years? Therefore, for a moment, she was only suspicious. Of course, there was another very important reason. Zhang Xiaohua came out of the Yulong Grand Canyon with Zhang Xiaohu, Changge, and Chan Chun. If this Zhang Xiaohua was the manservant of Huanqi Manor, then as the elder brother, Zhang Xiaohu had no reason not to recognize him. But even if Zhang Xiaohu recognized him and helped to hide it, he wouldn't hide it from Changge and Chen Chun. But who were Changge and Chen Chun? They were the disciples that Aunt Qin had brought up since they were young. They wouldn't hide anything from Aunt Qin. If this young man was Zhang Xiaohua, Changge and Chen Chun would have told her at the first moment. Since they didn't say it, this person definitely wasn't Zhang Xiaohua. It had to be said that Aunt Qin's analysis was very thorough, but the result of her analysis was based on the loyalty of Changge and Chen Chun. What about Changge and Chen Chun? They had long been on the side of outsiders. Not to mention the so-called small matter of Zhang Xiaohua being the disciple on duty in the pill opening hall, they didn't mention a word about the kindness of replacing Zhang Xiaohua to spread merits and collecting all the injured disciples of the Misty School. Aunt Qin stared at Zhang Xiaohua until her hair stood on end. She unconsciously laughed and said, "Deputy Hall Master Qin, you still can't believe it, right?" "Haha, not at all." Aunt Qin waved her hand and motioned for Du Feng to leave. Then she said, "It's really a blessing for the pill opening hall to cultivate a disciple like Nephew Ren. It's also a blessing for you. If your senior fellow apprentices were like this, how could they have broken up? Of course, if it weren't for their greed, how could our hall have met such a young talent like Nephew Ren?" Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly cupped her hands and said that she didn't dare. Aunt Qin changed the topic and said with a smile, "But I have a question to ask Nephew Ren." When Zhang Xiaohua saw Du Feng leave, she knew that Aunt Qin had something to ask. She smiled and said, "Deputy Hall Master Qin, just say it. We were in the same boat just now, and I still want to stay on this boat for a few more years." "Good." Aunt Qin gave her a thumbs up and praised, "Nephew Ren is very forthright. It's nothing much. I just want to ask you about someone." Zhang Xiaohua pretended to be stunned and said, "Someone? Which senior fellow apprentice of Bai Yefeng?" "It's not Bai Yefeng's senior fellow apprentice." Aunt Qin's face was mysterious, but her eyes were staring into Zhang Xiaohua's eyes. She whispered, "I want to ask Nephew Ren if you know Zhang Xiaohua." Sure enough, Zhang Xiaohua secretly thought. However, since Aunt Qin had just negotiated with her and now asked her this question, it meant that Changge and Chen Chun didn't tell her that she was Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua already had a plan in mind. Although her heart skipped a beat, her eyes didn't shrink back at all. She smiled and said, "Zhang Xiaohua? You don't know her? What an ugly reputation. Is she a village girl?" "Vice Hall Master Qin, you're wrong. My pill repository hall has a majority of male disciples, and I've never seen many female disciples. If you want me to inquire about the inner sect female disciples of Lingering Fragrance Peak, you're wrong. I also know very little." Then, he looked at Aunt Qin's appearance and suddenly realized something. He said, "Could it be that she's an inner disciple of Misty Hall? Is she Xiao Tiantian's junior or senior fellow apprentice? If she's like junior sister A, Deputy Hall Master Qin should keep your mouth shut." Hearing this, Aunt Qin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She waved her hand and said, "This person is not a female disciple of Misty Hall or Lingxiang Peak." Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, "Then whose name is it? Could it be Xiaohua, Xiaoqiao, or Puppy's name?" -3. Chapter 770. The awakening pill in the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace began to gestate. Zhang Xiaohua adjusted the fire slightly and left the alchemy room. After entering the alchemy room, she had a few days of leisure. There was no movement from Oyan's side, but He Tianshu wanted to take a look. He had sealed her acupoints for so long. It was time to unseal them. Sure enough, when Zhang Xiaohua came to the small room, Zhang Xiaohu was anxiously pacing inside. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua come in with a relaxed face, he couldn't help but ask, "Xiaohua, where have you been these days? You didn't even show up. Even when I sent people to the small courtyard of the alchemy hall to look for you, no one answered?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Second brother, don't worry. Didn't I also have an urgent matter?" Miso is even more anxious than Captain He. Zhang Xiao patted his forehead and said, "Alas, I forgot about this. Miss O is the sister of sect leader O. Although she has never been in contact with our Misty Hall, in the eyes of the disciples, she is also a kind of spiritual support. If something happens to her, it will be a self-evident blow to the disciples of our Misty School. However, Miss O is a person that sect leader personally guaranteed. Who has the guts to be so ruthless?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, "How would I know? You go burn incense and ask God." But Zhang Xiaohua said until here, but hesitated. Although she saw someone spying on Oyan on the mountain, she didn't know what was written inside. There was no evidence, so it was still too early to make a conclusion. Then she said, "Miss O is really good to me. Of course, I have to do my best to help her." "That's true. I also borrowed Miss O's glory to enter the Misty School. We must repay this kindness. I just don't know. How is the situation now?" "The pill will be refined in a few days. You just need to feed it to Miss O. There shouldn't be a big problem. You can really refine pills?" Zhang Xiaohu was still surprised as he asked, "The pharmacy halls. Even Marshal Uncle, he doesn't understand these things. How did you learn them? Did Rejuvenation Valley really teach you this? Oh right, why is she so nice to you? He had both medical skills and alchemy skills. Is this a pure relationship between a man and a woman?" Zhang Xiaohua was very embarrassed. Regarding Ye Qinyu's matter, Zhang Xiaohua was very vague and did not say it clearly. Zhang Xiaohu's question hit the nail on the head. Yes, how could Rejuvenation Valley be so generous? Why did he have to teach Zhang Xiaohua everything? Scratching her head, Zhang Xiaohua said, "You don't have to ask about that. In any case, who would benefit the most from me knowing how to concoct pills? Even if I don't say it, you should know that if you make me angry, you won't even get half a pill." Zhang Xiaohu curled his lips and said with a domineering and arrogant face, "I'll see if you dare." Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, "By the way, second brother, I forgot that Deputy Hall Master Qin came to see me a few days ago." She recognized you?" Zhang Xiaohu laughed and said, "Maybe Chang'e and Qinshan told her." "Forget it, second brother. Haven't you noticed? Your charm now is incredible. In second sister-in-law's heart, your position is far higher than that of Hall Master Qin." Zhang Xiaohua joked, "Deputy Hall Master Qin just suspected me. She didn't know my identity, and, with that, Zhang Xiaohua told him about the deal between the Misty Hall and the Pill Expanding Hall, as well as her 30% profit." "Ah?" Zhang Xiaohu's face was filled with astonishment as he said, "I am aware that the Pill Tower Hall is short on quality goods. Even the disciples of Shixin Peak are aware of this. However, I am unaware of the benefits of 30%, 40%, and even 60%. Even the other disciples are unaware of this." Zhang Xiaohua sneered, "This is the humiliation of the Misty Hall. How can you let your disciples know? How can you lose the face of the Hall Masters for no reason? Sometimes, not knowing anything may be a kind of happiness. But shouldn't we have the right to know? After all, these herbs were planted by us one by one. If they give them away so easily, won't they consider our hard work?" "The right to know?" Zhang Xiaohua snorted and said, "Even if this right was given to Zhao Jian or Du Feng, it would not be given to a direct disciple like you. You don't have the strength to match it, but you have the ability to incite others. Do you think others will give you the right to speak and the right to know?" Zhang Xiaohu was sad. Zhang Xiaohua then comforted him, "You are now an ordinary disciple of Xiaoyao Zizai. If you are in the position of the Hall Master, you may have similar considerations. They should have their own difficulties. Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said, Alas, it is so. It is really not easy to protect the disciples of the Misty Hall and the Serene Peak. But 70% of the elixirs, how can I not feel heartache when I hear that? Maybe I didn't have time to participate in the past, and I don't know if I can participate in the future. Since I am in the Serene Peak, I will not let the Misty Hall suffer. Come on, you have taken 30% of the elixirs, and you still have the nerve to say that. Hee, why do I want these elixirs? Didn't I give them to you? Zhang Xiaohua shrugged and said, If you don't want them, I will take back the White Mountain. Zhang Xiaohu was stunned and said, You don't want to use these elixirs to bribe the hall master of the Pill Expansion Hall and others? I don't count on them. Why should I bribe them? It is better to give them to you directly than to them. But don't forget, if you don't bribe them, your hall master will call you back, and then he will send other people over. Second brother, I have to say that you are too honest. First, many people covet this position in the Pill Expansion Hall, but they are afraid of losing their hands and feet, and even their lives. The hall master doesn't know how to send people over. Maybe the lingering fragrance peak also knows about this, so this time he sent me, an unknown little medicine boy, to come over. Moreover, I have some relationship with the Misty Hall, so it is a chance for the Misty Hall to reconcile. Even if I don't give them elixirs, I don't think there will be anyone else in the next few years. Second, second brother, you really can't think of it? Zhang Xiaohu curiously said, There is a second reason? I really can't think of it. Tell me about it. Zhang Xiaohua proudly said, This Xiaoxia can refine elixirs myself, who would have the problem of giving them the herbs and let them peel off a layer of skin for no reason? Zhang Xiaohu was shocked and looked at Zhang Xiaohua very strangely. Are you Xiaohua? Zhang Xiaohua curiously said, I am Ren Xiaoyao. No wonder. I was wondering when the always stingy Xiaohua would help our Misty School refine elixirs for free. So it is Ren Xiaoyao, then it is not strange. Zhang Xiaohua swayed and almost fell down. She pointed at her own nose. Second brother, do I have such an image in your heart? Zhang Xiaohu rubbed his chin and said, It's better than that? Forget it. I can't be bothered to bicker with you. I don't have anything in common with you. Zhang Xiaohua looked defeated. She walked over to He Tianshu and said, Captain, he still thinks highly of me, and thinks that my aptitude is good. Forget it, he doesn't even want to take you as a disciple. After saying that, he slapped his forehead and said, I understand now. You didn't come for several days because of this sentence. Did you want to starve Martial Uncle He until he is skin and bones? Am I that petty? Zhang Xiaohua angrily said, Even worse. Zhang Xiaohu still came to this conclusion. Zhang Xiaohua took out a jade bottle from her bosom and threw it to Zhang Xiaohu. Take a look and see what this is. Zhang Xiaohu poured out a pill, but couldn't understand it. So he humbly asked, What is this? Fasting pill. Zhang Xiaohua said unhappily, I gave it to Captain He the next day. Miso did the same. She ate one pill and didn't feel thirsty or hungry for 7 days. Really? It seems that I am blaming you. After saying that, Zhang Xiaohu quietly put the jade bottle into his bosom. His movements were so light that it was as if he was caressing Chang Ji's skin. Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes at him and didn't say anything. She just put her finger on He Tianshu's pulse and carefully checked his pulse. Then, she infused her true qi into He Tianshu's body to check the joints that she had crushed one by one. After a while, she withdrew her finger. How is it? Zhang Xiaohu probed. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. Is it? Zhang Xiaohu heard and quickly asked, Even if there is a problem, Martial Uncle He's life. Not only is his life saved, even his joints are saved. Zhang Xiaohua's face was filled with worry. When Zhang Xiaohu saw this, he comforted her. You did your best. Then, he realized something and asked, You said his joints are saved? Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, Yes, Captain He's joints are recovering very well. This bone-solidifying pill really lives up to its name. I just checked and all the joints in his body have started to heal. However, the bones are the backbone of the human body. It will take some time for them to heal, maybe 40 to 50 days. That's good. Don't talk about 40 to 50 days. Even if it takes a year, Marshall Uncle he would be willing to wait. What? Only 40 to 50 days? Zhang Xiaohu was slow to realize. This is too unbelievable. What do you know? How can my Beidou school's elixir be guessed by an ordinary person like you? Beidou school? Zhang Xiaohu asked curiously. When did you enter Beidou school? Who's your master? This. Zhang Xiaohua scratched his chin and said, currently, Xiaoxia is the only one in Beidou school. Wait for me to slowly look for a disciple. Ha ha ha, okay. When you establish your own sect, I will bring your nephew to congratulate you. Great. He directly extended the pole to the next generation. Zhang Xiaohua laughed. It doesn't matter if he congratulates me or not. Just remember to return the things you borrowed from me to Beidou school. The two brothers chatted for a while. Then, Zhang Xiaohua said, Captain, he has been poked for a few days. It's time for him to get some fresh air. However, you can watch over him more these few days. Don't let anything happen to him. Zhang Xiaohu nodded. Just as he was about to agree, he heard someone anxiously shouting, Senior Zhang, please cast a monthly vote. Please cast a recommendation vote. Please collect. Please tip. Thank you. -3. Chapter 771. The awakening pill in the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace began to gestate. Zhang Xiaohua adjusted the fire slightly and left the alchemy room. After entering the alchemy room, she had a few days of leisure. There was no movement from Oyan's side, but He Tianshu wanted to take a look. He had sealed her acupoints for so long. It was time to unseal them. Sure enough, when Zhang Xiaohua came to the small room, Zhang Xiaohu was anxiously pacing inside. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua come in with a relaxed face, he couldn't help but ask, Xiaohua, where have you been these days? You didn't even show up. Even when I sent people to the small courtyard of the alchemy hall to look for you, no one answered? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Second brother, don't worry. Didn't I also have an urgent matter? Miss O is even more anxious than Captain He. Zhang Xiaohu patted his forehead and said, Alas, I forgot about this. Miss O is the sister of sect leader O. Although she has never been in contact with our Misty Hall, in the eyes of the disciples, she is also a kind of spiritual support. If something happens to her, it will be a self-evident blow to the disciples of our Misty School. However, Miss O is a person that sect leader personally guaranteed. Who has the guts to be so ruthless? Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, How would I know? You go burn incense and ask God. But, Zhang Xiaohua said until here, but hesitated. Although she saw someone spying on Oyan on the mountain, she didn't know what was written inside. There was no evidence, so it was still too early to make a conclusion. Then she said, Miss O is really good to me. Of course, I have to do my best to help her. That's true. I also borrowed Miss O's glory to enter the Misty School. We must repay this kindness. I just don't know. How is the situation now? The pill will be refined in a few days. You just need to feed it to Miss O. There shouldn't be a big problem. You can really refine pills? Zhang Xiaohu was still surprised as he asked, The pharmacy halls. Even Marshall Uncle he doesn't understand these things. How did you learn them? Did Rejuvenation Valley really teach you this? Oh right. Why is she so nice to you? He had both medical skills and alchemy skills. Is this a pure relationship between a man and a woman? Zhang Xiaohua was very embarrassed. Regarding Nye Qianyu's matter, Zhang Xiaohua was very vague and did not say it clearly. Zhang Xiaohu's question hit the nail on the head. Yes, how could Rejuvenation Valley be so generous? Why did he have to teach Zhang Xiaohua everything? Scratching her head, Zhang Xiaohua said, You don't have to ask about that. In any case, who would benefit the most from me knowing how to concoct pills? Even if I don't say it, you should know that if you make me angry, you won't even get half a pill. Zhang Xiaohu curled his lips and said with a domineering and arrogant face, I'll see if you dare. Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, By the way, second brother, I forgot that Deputy Hall Master Qin came to see me a few days ago. She recognized you? Zhang Xiaohu laughed and said, Maybe Chang'e and Qinchin told her. Forget it, second brother. Haven't you noticed? Your charm now is incredible. In second sister-in-law's heart, Your position is far higher than that of Hall Master Qin. Zhang Xiaohua joked. Deputy Hall Master Qin just suspected me. She didn't know my identity, and, with that, Zhang Xiaohua told him about the deal between the Misty Hall and the Pill Expanding Hall, as well as her 30% profit. Ah? Zhang Xiaohu looked surprised and said, I know that the Pill Expanding Hall is short of quality goods, and even all the disciples of the Serene Peak know it. But 30%, 40%, and even 60% of the profit, I don't know about it. Even other disciples don't know about it. Zhang Xiaohua sneered. This is the humiliation of the Misty Hall. How can you let your disciples know about it? How can you embarrass the Hall Masters for no reason? Sometimes, not knowing anything may be a kind of happiness. But shouldn't we have the right to know? After all, these herbs were planted by us one by one. They gave them away so easily. Didn't they consider our hard work? The right to know? Zhang Xiaohua snorted and said, even if this right is given to Zhao Jian or Du Feng, it won't be given to you, a direct disciple. You don't have enough force but enough instigating power. Do you think others will give you the right to speak and the right to know? Zhang Xiaohu was sad. Zhang Xiaohua then comforted him. You are now an ordinary disciple of Xiaoyao Zizai. If you are in the position of Hall Master, you may have similar considerations. They should have their own difficulties. Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said, Alas, it is so. It is not easy to protect the disciples of the Misty Hall in the Serene Peak. But 70% of the elixirs were given away. How can I not feel heartache? Maybe I didn't have time to participate in the past. I don't know if I can participate in the future. Since I am in the Serene Peak, second brother, I will not let the Misty Hall suffer. Forget it. You have taken 30% of the elixirs, and you still have the nerve to say it. Hee, why do I want these elixirs? Didn't I give them to you? Zhang Xiaohua shrugged and said, If you don't want them, I will take back the White Mountain. Zhang Xiaohu was stunned and said, You don't want to use these elixirs to bribe the Hall Master of the Pill Expansion Hall and others? I don't count on them. Why should I bribe them? It is better to give them to you than to them. But don't forget that if you don't bribe them, your Hall Master will call you back. Won't he send other people over? Second brother, I have to say that you are too honest. First of all, many people covet this position in the Pill Expansion Hall, but they are afraid of losing their hands and feet, or even their lives. The Hall Master doesn't know how to send people over. Maybe the Lingering Fragrance Peak also knows about this. This time he sent me, an unknown little medicine boy, because I have some connection with your Misty Hall. It is a chance for your Misty Hall to reconcile. Even if I don't give them elixirs, I don't think there will be anyone else in these years. Second, second brother, you really can't think of it? Zhang Xiaohu curiously said, There is a second reason? I really can't think of it. Tell me about it. Zhang Xiaohua proudly said, I, Xiaoxia, can refine elixirs myself. Who would have the problem to give them the herbs and let them peel off a layer of my skin for no reason? Zhang Xiaohu was surprised and looked at Zhang Xiaohua curiously. Are you Xiaohua? Zhang Xiaohua curiously said, I am Ren Xiaoyao. No wonder. I was wondering when the stingy Xiaohua would help our Misty School refine elixirs for free. So it is Ren Xiaoyao. Then it is not strange. Zhang Xiaohua swayed and almost fell down. She pointed at her own nose and said, Second brother, do I have such an image in your mind? Zhang Xiaohu rubbed his chin and said, It's better than that? Sigh, forget it. I can't be bothered to bicker with you. I don't have anything in common with you. Zhang Xiaohua looked defeated. She walked over and looked at He Tianshu. Captain, he still thinks highly of me. You think my aptitude is good. Forget it. He doesn't even want to take you as a disciple. After saying that, he slapped his forehead and said, I understand now. You didn't come for several days because of that sentence. Are you trying to starve Marshal Uncle He into a bag of bones? Am I that petty? Zhang Xiaohua said angrily, Better than you. Zhang Xiaohu still came to this conclusion. Zhang Xiaohua took out a jade bottle from her bosom and threw it to Zhang Xiaohu. Take a look and see what this is. Zhang Xiaohu poured out a pill. He looked left and right but couldn't understand it. He humbly asked, What is this? Fasting pill. Zhang Xiaohua said in a bad mood. I gave it to Captain He the next day. Miso did the same. She ate one pill and didn't feel hungry or thirsty for 7 days. Really? It seems like I'm blaming you. After saying that, Zhang Xiaohu quietly put the jade bottle into his bosom. His movements were so light that it was as if he was caressing Chang Ji's skin. Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes and didn't say anything. She just placed her finger on He Tianchu's pulse and carefully checked his pulse. Then, she transferred her zhenqi into He Tianchu's body and checked all the joints that she had crushed. After a while, she retracted her finger. How is it? Zhang Xiaohu probed. Sigh, Zhang Xiaohua sighed. Is it? Zhang Xiaohu hurriedly asked. Even if there's a problem, Marshal Uncle He's life. Sigh, it's not just his life that's saved. Even his joints are saved. Zhang Xiaohua's face was filled with worry. When Zhang Xiaohu saw this, he comforted her. You've already tried your best? Then, he suddenly realized something. You're saying that his joints are saved? Zhang Xiaohua nodded. Yes, Captain He's joints are recovering very well. This bone-solidifying pill really lives up to its name. I just checked and all the joints in his body have started to heal. However, the bones are the backbone of the human body. It will take some time for them to heal. Maybe 40 to 50 days. That's good, that's good. Not to mention 40 to 50 days, even if it takes a year. I'm sure Marshal Uncle He will be willing to wait. What? Only 40 to 50 days? Zhang Xiaohu realized something. This is too unbelievable. What do you know? How can my Beidou school's elixir be guessed by an ordinary person like you? Beidou school? Zhang Xiaohu asked curiously. When did you enter Beidou school? Who's your master? This. Zhang Xiaohua scratched his chin and said, Currently, Xiaoxia is the only one in Beidou school. Wait for me to slowly look for a disciple. Ha ha ha, okay. When you establish your own sect, I'll bring your nephew to congratulate you. Great, he was going to extend his influence to the next generation. Zhang Xiaohua chuckled. It doesn't matter if they congratulate me or not. Just remember to return the things you borrowed from me to Beidou school. The two brothers chatted for a while. Then, Zhang Xiaohua said, Captain He has been called out for a few days. It's time for him to get some fresh air. However, you can come and watch over him for the next few days. Don't let him change. Zhang Xiaohu nodded. Just as he was about to agree, he heard someone anxiously shouting, Senior Brother Zhang, Senior Brother Zhang, please cast a monthly vote, please cast a recommendation vote, please collect, please tip, thank you. -3. Chapter 772. Hearing Zhang Xiaohua's question, Aunt Qin's face was bleak as she said uninterestedly, This is a disciple that I met when I was in the Misty School in Pingyang City. She looks really like you. Zhang Xiaohua? Zhang Xiaohu? Zhang Xiaohua had an epiphany and said with a smile, I understand now. When your hall's senior brother Zhang Xiaohu saved me in the Yulong Grand Canyon, his face was full of astonishment. He kept muttering that I was too similar to someone. When I asked him, he didn't say anything and only said that it was impossible. I didn't dare to pry too deeply into my benefactor's privacy. Do you think this person is Zhang Xiaohu's elder brother or younger brother? Aunt Qi nodded and said, Yes, Zhang Xiaohua is Zhang Xiaohu's younger brother. He was taken away by thieves many years ago and is probably no longer in this world. Zhang Xiaohua's face was full of regret as he said, I was wondering why senior brother Zhang's expression was so sad. So that's why. It seems that I've been hanging around in front of him these past few days, making him unhappy. It seems that I have to go less in the future. Nephew Run, don't worry. This is something that happened many years ago. If you are grateful for Zhang Xiaohu's kindness, it's better for you to go more often. Perhaps he also hopes that you can go more often. Really? Zhang Xiaohua's face was filled with disbelief as he said, If that's the case, then I hope to visit senior brother Zhang more often. Moreover, I'm sure Vice Hall Master Qin can also tell how much I respect senior brother Zhang. This little concession, take it as me repaying senior brother Zhang's kindness. Of course it's true. Nephew Ren is not only Zhang Xiaohu's friend, but also our Misty Hall's friend. Our Misty Hall welcomes you at any time. Zhang Xiaohua stood up and said, "Since that's the case, thank you, Vice Hall Master Qin. I'll be at Serene Peak for many years. I hope Vice Hall Master Qin can take care of me." "Well said, well said." Aunt Qin bowed slightly and shouted, "Du Feng, send nephew Ren out." Zhang Xiaohua cupped her hands and bid farewell to Aunt Qin. Under Du Feng's lead, they walked towards the small courtyard of the pill-expanding hall. Halfway there, Zhang Xiaohua said, "I already know the path ahead, so Senior Marshal Brother Du doesn't need to see me off. It's already late, so you should go back and rest." Du Feng nodded, but he looked hesitant, as if he had something to say. Zhang Xiaohua saw that he did not move and could not help but smile. "Senior Du, do you have something to say in private?" Du Feng thought for a moment and said, "It's nothing. I just have a small matter to ask." "Go ahead." Zhang Xiaohua looked generous. "Anyway, I don't need to pay a big sum. Just bring it on." Sure enough, Du Feng asked, "That, Junior Brother Ren, I want to ask, where have you been these days? I've looked for you several times, but your courtyard door was tightly shut. No matter how I called, it wouldn't open. If it wasn't for the ban, this small courtyard is equivalent to your pill-expanding hall. I would have climbed over to take a look." There's such a good thing? Can't any disciple of the Misty Hall enter this small courtyard? Du Feng rolled his eyes and said, "Of course. Even the Qinkuan Hall and Shuyu Hall are like this." Haha. Zhang Xiaohua laughed. "That's so humane. By the way, Junior Brother Ren, you haven't answered my question." "AI, what's there to answer? We're all men. What's there to not understand?" Hearing this, Du Feng was even more confused. He grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's hand and said, "Brother, I'm asking you because I don't understand." Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Do you still need to ask?" "Of course, it's to see the scenery." "See the scenery?" Du Feng scratched his head in confusion. "I don't know about the scenery of your White Mountain Peak, but it is one of the 19 peaks of the Fragrant Religion. Could it be that the scenery of our Serene Peak is better than that of White Mountain Peak?" Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but laugh. He could tell that this senior brother Du was a righteous disciple who had been cultivating in the ethereal sect all this time. Since he didn't even know about this, he could only whisper, "Your first faith peak naturally has many beautiful sceneries that our White Mountain Peak doesn't have. Doesn't senior brother Du enjoy these beautiful sceneries?" The word beautiful was heavily emphasized. Du Feng was at a loss and shook his head slightly. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua also shook her head and said, "Your Serene Peak has a lot of youthful and beautiful scenery, but my White Mountain Peak doesn't have it. If I don't walk around and feast my eyes on it, how can I live up to the Hall Master's love?" After saying that, she waved her hand and left. Beautiful scenery? Youthful and beautiful? Du Feng didn't understand at first, but then he understood. He couldn't help but blush as he looked at Zhang Xiaohua's back that had disappeared into the darkness. He whispered, "A foreign brat knows how to appreciate the scenery, but I don't know how to appreciate it. I don't know what to do every day. Tomorrow morning, I will also go and enjoy the scenery." After settling the matters of the Misty Hall and sending Du Feng away, Zhang Xiaohua went straight to the top of the mountain. In the past, he was worried that if he wasn't on duty in the courtyard, he would be found out. Today, after hearing Du Feng's words, it turned out that this courtyard was under the control of Xiaoxia. Even Yang Rupiang couldn't enter easily, otherwise, it would be considered as offending the pill hall. Ha ha ha, what was there for Zhang Xiaohua to be afraid of? He could do whatever he wanted. What was there to be afraid of being found out? The only thing missing was a sign at the entrance that said, "Jealous people and dogs are not allowed to enter." Zhang Xiaohua went straight to the alchemy room. The room was steaming hot, and the greenish-yellow flame licked the bottom of the 8 trigrams purple-gold furnace from time to time, gradually fusing the elixir. The true samadhi fire, which was as thin as a red thread, shuttled back and forth from time to time, refining more impurities. Everything was under his control. Zhang Xiaohua composed himself, took out a praying mat, and sat down to prepare for his daily homework. When he woke up the next day, Zhang Xiaohua did the same thing as before. First, he carefully observed the alchemy furnace, then absorbed the essence of the sun, and practiced the Big Dipper magical fist several times to refine his bones. After doing all this, He went to Oyan's room and did not disturb Qiutong and the others. He carefully observed the situation, then went straight to Zhang Xiaohu's backyard to check on He Tianchu's condition. Only then did he return to the alchemy room. Now, Oyan was the most important. This awakening pill could not be lost. He Tianchu had already taken the bone coagulation pill, and if nothing went wrong, he should be able to walk. As for whether he could practice martial arts, that would depend on the changes in the future. In short, these two patients were Zhang Xiaohua's current task. As for Zhang Xiaohua could only do this. He understood the principle of biting off more than he could chew. No matter how many martial arts he was given, it would not be as good as one that was suitable for him to practice. After a few days, Zhang Xiaohua did not go anywhere. Other than looking at the two of them, he cultivated in the alchemy room. These days were simple but fulfilling. As for the small courtyard of the alchemy hall, to hell with it. The four odd beasts, Huan, were still inside, so it could not be said that there was no one guarding the alchemy hall. That night, when Zhang Xiaohua was sleeping, a black shadow came to Shixin Peak and came to the front of the big tree. After looking around, he floated up and quietly took away the note hidden on the tree. That day was the day of the alchemy process. Zhang Xiaohua had rested enough and transferred all the stored qi into his meridians. Most of his qi had been stolen by the delusion breaker eye. If he did not have enough qi during the alchemy process, he would be in big trouble. To be safe, Zhang Xiaohua still held a piece of primordial stone in his hand. Not long after, the boiling medicinal liquid gradually calmed down. The medicinal liquid that had gradually taken the shape of a yin-yang fish was as still as a virgin. Everything was restrained. Although there was a slight fluctuation in the center of the medicinal liquid, it instantly spread throughout the entire medicinal liquid. The fusion of the medicinal liquid was immediately broken. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent. He knew that it was the beginning of the alchemy process. He immediately formed a seal and inserted it into the medicinal liquid. As the seal was inserted, the exterior of the medicinal liquid gradually showed signs of solidification. It was precisely because of this that the qi in Zhang Xiaohua's meridians rushed out like a flood. It was much faster than before when he was refining pills. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked. He slowed down the speed of the seal and did his best to absorb the primordial stone's primordial stone to satisfy the needs of the alchemy process. He did not know whether the refining of the spirit awakening pill consumed so much qi or if it was because his qi was less than before. In short, he could not afford to make any mistakes at this time. He could only brace himself and face the difficulties head-on. He had no other choice. Fortunately, Zhang Xiaohua had used the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace many times. He had refined quite a few bone-solidifying pills, meridian-nourishing pills, and blood-replenishing pills. Everything was within his control. Just as his qi was about to dry up, the slowly rotating alchemy process stopped absorbing qi. Zhang Xiaohua heaved a sigh of relief and stopped the seal. He wiped the faint beads of sweat on his forehead and felt relieved. Now that the alchemy process was over, all that was left was to pull the alchemy process and collect the alchemy process. Although it was difficult, it was similar to the alchemy process. He thought that the qi in his body should be enough. Thinking of this, Zhang Xiaohua could not help but raise his left hand and look at the crack on his palm. He could not help but smile bitterly. The name Illusion Breaker Eye was indeed flashy, but what was the use of it? Just looking at it was enough to drain his divine sense. If he used it, wouldn't he be sucked dry? Furthermore, with the existence of this thing, no matter how much he cultivated, he would only have half of his qi left. His divine sense was even worse. It was only 10% of his original qi. He really only knew how to eat and did not know how to come out. Although Zhang Xiaohua grumbled, if he had to dig out the silver eye from his hand, he would definitely not be willing. This was something that even Huang Feng had on his forehead. Just thinking about it, he knew that its power was boundless. Thinking back to the scene he saw when he was unconscious, Zhang Xiaohua had long been shocked by the huge silver light pillar emitted by the silver eye. How could he let go of such an opportunity? -3. Chapter 773. The awakening pill in the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace began to gestate. Zhang Xiaohua adjusted the earth fire slightly and left the alchemy room. After entering the alchemy room, he had a few days of leisure. There was no movement from Yin, but He Tianshu wanted to take a look. He had sealed her acupoints for so long, and it was time to undo them. However, when Zhang Xiaohua escaped from the alchemy room at the top of the mountain and passed by the tree where the unknown disciple of the Misty Hall had placed the note, Zhang Xiaohua scanned with his divine sense like before and found that the note had disappeared. Strange. When did he take it away? Zhang Xiaohua was very puzzled. When he put the note into the tree that day, he had used the method of guiding spirit to mark it with his divine sense. If someone had taken the note, Zhang Xiaohua would definitely know. Thus, Zhang Xiaohua could also use this clue to catch a big fish and see if these people were related to Yan's illness. However, at this time, his efforts were in vain. He could not help but feel ashamed and angry. But thinking about it, these people had done things at night. Perhaps it was the time when he was unconscious. How could he know? On the lingering fragrance peak, in a secluded hut, a middle-aged disciple was reporting respectfully, "This disciple has returned from the serene peak. The situation there seems to be different from what we had expected." What? That little girl is not dead yet? A person stood with his back facing the door. His entire body was hidden in the shadows as he asked in astonishment. According to this disciple's report, the sect master has been very concerned about that place recently. He has sent the doctors from the lingering fragrance peak one by one. Could it be that they have found a way to treat her? The disciple shook his head. According to the news from the serene peak, this possibility is not big. According to our people's observation, those doctors shook their heads when they came out. Moreover, Miso has not appeared in the courtyard. Haha, not appearing does not mean that Miso has not been cured. It is the same as not confirming that Miss O is not dead without news of her death. Unfortunately, our disciples are only from the Misty Hall and cannot enter Yan's courtyard at will. Otherwise, we can get more accurate information. Do you think this disciple should? The man waved his hand decisively. No, Yin is just a chess piece. It is best if it works. Even if it does not work, there is no need to take the risk of being discovered by others to do something insignificant. Yes, sir. The man was still respectful. Did anyone else mention the news from the serene peak? For example, the doctors from the Misty Hall or lingering fragrance peak. No, the news only these, no one else. That's strange. If I'm not mistaken, Yin should have already. Why is she still struggling at death's door? What else could lingering fragrance peaks doctors know other than those bullshit medicinal pills? It seems I still have to take a look. The disciple hurriedly advised, "Sir, didn't you just say that it was insignificant? Why take the risk?" The disciple was silent and did not speak again. On the serene peak, Zhang Xiaohua came from the underground. When he came to the small hut, Zhang Xiaohu was anxiously pacing inside. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua come in with a relaxed face, he could not help but ask, "Xiaohua, where have you been these days? You did not show up, even when I sent people to the small courtyard of the pill hall to look for you." No one answered? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, "Second brother, don't worry, I also have something urgent to do. Miso is more anxious than Captain He." Zhang Xiao patted his forehead and said, "Alas, I forgot about this. Miss O is the sister of Master O. Although she has not been in contact with our Misty Hall, in the eyes of the disciples, she is also a kind of spiritual support. If something happens to her, it will be a self-evident blow to the disciples of our Misty School. It's just that Miss O is a person who has been personally guaranteed by Master. Who has the guts to be so ruthless?" Zhang Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, "How would I know? You go burn incense and ask God." But Zhang Xiaohua said until here and stopped. Although he saw someone spying on Yin on the mountain, he did not know what was written inside after all. There was no evidence, so it was too early to draw a conclusion. Then he said, "Miss O is really good to me. Of course I have to do my best to help her." "That's true. I also borrowed Miss O's glory to enter the Misty School. We must repay this kindness, but I don't know. How is the situation now?" "The medicinal pill will be refined in a few days. You just need to feed it to Miss O. There should be no big problem." "You can really refine medicinal pills?" Zhang Xiaohu was still surprised and asked, "The pharmacy hall? Even Masters Junior, he doesn't know this. How did you learn it? Is it really Rejuvenation Valley who taught you? By the way, why are they so good to you? They have medical skills and alchemy skills. Is it a pure relationship between a man and a woman?" Zhang Xiaohua was embarrassed. About Nie Qianyu, Zhang Xiaohua was vague and did not say it clearly. Zhang Xiaohu's question hit the nail on the head. Yes, how could Rejuvenation Valley be so generous? Why did they teach Zhang Xiaohua everything? Scratching her head, Zhang Xiaohua said, "Don't ask about this. Anyway, I can refine medicinal pills, so who benefits the most? Even if I don't say it, you know it very well. If you make me angry, you won't get half a medicinal pill." Zhang Xiaohu curled his lips and said with a domineering and arrogant face, "I'll see if you dare." Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, "By the way, second brother, I forgot that Deputy Hall Master Qin came to me a few days ago." She recognized you? Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile. Maybe Chang'e and Qinchin told her. "Forget it, second brother. Don't you find it? Your charm is incredible now. Your position in second sister-in-law's heart is far higher than that of Hall Master Qin." Zhang Xiaohua teased, "Vice Hall Master Qin only suspects me. He doesn't know my identity," and, with this, Zhang Xiaohua told him about the deal between Misty Hall and Pill Expanding Hall, as well as the 30% benefits she would get. Ah? Zhang Xiaohu's face was filled with astonishment as he said, "I am aware of the fact that the Pill Tower Hall is short on quality goods. Even the disciples of Serene Peak know about it. However, I am unaware of the benefits of 30, 40, and even 60%. Even the other disciples are unaware of it." Zhang Xiaohua sneered. "This is the humiliation of your Misty Hall. How can you let your disciples know? How can you embarrass the Hall Masters for no reason? Sometimes, not knowing anything may be a kind of happiness. But shouldn't we have the right to know? After all, these herbs were planted by us one by one. They gave them away so easily without considering our hard work. The right to know?" Zhang Xiaohua snorted from her nose and said, "Even if this right is given to Zhao Jin or Du Feng, it will not be given to you, a direct disciple. You don't have enough force but enough instigating power. Do you think others will give you the right to speak and the right to know?" Zhang Xiaohu was sad. Zhang Xiaohua then comforted him, "Don't meddle in politics when you are not in position. Now you are an ordinary disciple of Xiaoyao Zai. If you are the Hall Master, you may have similar considerations. They should have their own difficulties." Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said, "Alas, that's right. It's really not easy to protect the disciples of Misty Hall and Serene Peak. It's just 70% medicinal pills. How can I not feel heartache when I hear that? Maybe I didn't have time to participate in the things in the past. I don't know if I can participate in the things in the future. Since I am in Serene Peak, second brother, I will not let your Misty Hall suffer. Forget it. You have taken 30% of the medicinal pills. You still have the nerve to say that. Why do I want these medicinal pills? Didn't I give them to you?" Zhang Xiaohua shrugged and said, "If you don't want them, I will take back White Snow Peak." Zhang Xiaohu was stunned and said, "You don't want to use these medicinal pills to bribe the hall master of your Pill Expansion Hall and others? I don't count on them. Why should I bribe them? It's better to give them to you directly than to them. But don't forget that if you don't bribe them, your hall master will call you back. Won't he send someone else over?" "Second brother, I have to say that you are too honest. First, because many people covet this position in Pill Expansion Hall, but they are afraid of losing their hands and feet, or even their lives. The hall master doesn't know how to send people over. Maybe Lingering Fragrance Peak also knows about this. This time, they sent me, an unknown little medicine boy, because I have some connection with your Misty Hall. It can be regarded as a chance for your Misty Hall to reconcile. Even if I don't give them medicinal pills, they probably won't change people in the next few years. Second, second brother, you really can't think of it?" Zhang Xiaohu curiously said, "There is a second reason? I really can't think of it. Tell me." Zhang Xiaohua proudly said, "I, Xiaoxia, can refine pills myself. Who would have the problem to give them medicinal herbs and let them peel off a layer of skin for no reason?" Zhang Xiaohu was shocked. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua curiously and asked, "Are you Xiaohua?" Zhang Xiaohua curiously said, I am Ren Xiaoyao. Hee. No wonder. I was wondering when the stingy Xiaohua would refine pills for our misty school for no reason. So it's Ren Xiaoyao. Then it's not strange. Zhang Xiaohua swayed and almost fell down. She pointed at her own nose and said, Second brother, do I have such an image in your heart? Zhang Xiaohu touched his chin and said, It's even worse? Sigh. Forget it. Forget it. I'm too lazy to argue with you. I have nothing in common with you. Zhang Xiaohua looked defeated. She walked over and looked at He Tianshu and said, Captain, he still thinks highly of me and thinks that my aptitude is good. Forget it. He doesn't even want to take you as a disciple. After saying that, he slapped his forehead and said, I understand now. You didn't come for several days because of this sentence. Are you trying to starve Martial Uncle He into a bag of bones? Am I that narrow-minded? Zhang Xiaohua said angrily, It's better. It's better. Zhang Xiaohu still came to the same conclusion. Zhang Xiaohua took out a jade bottle and threw it to Zhang Xiaohu and said, Take a look and see what this is. Zhang Xiaohu poured out a pill. He looked left and right but couldn't understand it. He asked humbly, What is this? Fasting pill. Zhang Xiaohua said unhappily, I gave it to Captain He the next day. Miso did the same. She ate one pill and didn't feel thirsty or hungry for 7 days. Really? It seems that I'm blaming you. After saying that, Zhang Xiaohu quietly put the jade bottle into his pocket. His movements were so light that it was as if he was caressing Chang Ji's skin. Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes at him and didn't say anything. She just put her finger on He Tianshu's pulse and carefully checked his pulse. Then, she transferred her true qi into He Tianshu's body to check the joints that she had crushed one by one. After a while, she withdrew her finger. How is it? Zhang Xiaohu probed. Zhang Xiaohua sighed. Is it? Zhang Xiaohu quickly asked, Even if there's a problem, Martial Uncle He's life, it's not just his life that's saved. Even his joints are saved. Zhang Xiaohua's face was filled with worry. When Zhang Xiaohu saw this, he comforted her. You've already done your best. Then, he realized something and asked, You're saying that his joints are saved? Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, Yes, Captain He's joints are recovering very well. This bone-solidifying pill really lives up to its name. I just checked and all the joints in his body have started to heal. However, the bones are the backbone of the human body. It will take some time for them to heal. Maybe 40 to 50 days. That's good, that's good. Don't mention 40 to 50 days. Even if it takes a year, Martial Uncle He would be willing to wait. What? Only 40 to 50 days? Zhang Xiaohu realized something and said, This is too inconceivable. What do you know? How can the elixirs of my Beidou school be guessed by an ordinary person like you? Beidou school? Zhang Xiaohu asked curiously. When did you enter Beidou school? Who's your master? Zhang Xiaohua scratched his chin and said, Currently, Xiaoxia is the only one in Beidou school. Wait for me to slowly look for a disciple. Okay. When you establish your own sect, I'll bring your nephew to congratulate you. Great. He was going to extend his influence to the next generation. Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, It doesn't matter if he congratulates you or not. Just remember to return the things you borrowed from me to Beidou school. The two brothers chatted for a while. Then, Zhang Xiaohua said, Captain He has been called out for a few days. It's time for him to get some fresh air. However, you can come and watch over him for the next few days. Don't let him change. Zhang Xiaohu nodded. Just as he was about to agree, he heard someone anxiously shout, Senior Brother Zhang, Senior Brother Zhang. -3. Chapter 774. Hearing someone shouting outside, Zhang Xiaohu asked curiously, Who's looking for me? My courtyard has always been quiet. Ever since you created the whitening elixir last time, there have been more female disciples, but not many male disciples. Zhang Xiaohua smiled. Could it be that they're here to fight for your affections? Hurry up and leave. I'll unseal Captain He's acupoints. Okay. Zhang Xiaohu answered and walked out. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the unconscious He Tianshu and channeled her true qi to her fingers. She tapped his acupoints from head to toe and unsealed them. He Tianshu groaned and opened his eyes. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua and then looked left and right. He couldn't help but ask, Zhang Xiaohua, am I dreaming? Whether it's a dream or not, you're lying there. Think about it yourself. He Tianshu closed his eyes for a while and tried his best to raise his head. He looked at the splints on his limbs and smiled bitterly. It's an injury again. However, after a while, he smiled and said, your second brother's methods are really amazing. I don't seem to feel much pain. How did he do it? Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, he didn't do much. He just sealed your acupoints. It's been a few days since he treated you. It's natural that you don't feel much pain. A few days? He Tianshu was surprised. Zhang Xiaohu actually sealed my acupoints for a few days and healed me every day. Sigh, it's really hard on him. However, it doesn't seem right. Xiaohua, I haven't eaten anything for a few days and I don't feel hungry or thirsty. Zhang Xiaohua didn't know anything and said, I don't know. When you see second brother later, you can ask him yourself. Okay. He Tianshu didn't want to make things difficult for someone who was just an assistant. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly thought of something and said to He Tianshu, Captain He, I have something to ask of you. Ask me? What is it? He Tianshu was puzzled. If I can't do it, it's better if you don't say it. Naturally, it's very easy to do. Zhang Xiaohua said, just don't tell anyone that you know me. I'm now using the name of Ren Xiaoyao, the medicine boy of Tuodin Hall. Why is that? He Tianshu didn't understand. It's just a stopgap measure. It's convenient to use Ren Xiaoyao's name to do anything. No one will associate me with my second brother. Moreover, I used the name Ren Xiaoyao when I entered the aroma religion. If someone finds out that something is wrong, it may harm the person who sent me here. He Tianshu couldn't help but nod his head when he heard that it might affect others. After all, in his heart, Zhang Xiaohua was just an inexperienced country bumpkin. It didn't matter what name she used. Thank you, Captain He. Oh, remember, don't tell anyone. I know, I just don't know you. What was so difficult about that? Even if Hall Master Yang asks me, I won't say anything. It seems that no one wants to know you. He Tianshu said in a bad mood. He, then I'm relieved. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, by the way, Captain He, do you feel any discomfort in your joints? He Tianshu closed his eyes and felt for a moment. He said with some joy, there's nothing wrong. It's just a little itchy. It's the feeling of bones growing. I've felt it before when my joints were healing. It seems that this is just the beginning. It's just a little itchy. Haha, that's good. Zhang Xiaohua's face lit up. She cupped her hands and said, then I wish Captain He the best of luck. You'll be full of vigor and vitality as you take the lead. Without waiting for Zhang Xiaohua to finish, He Tianshu interrupted, don't flatter me. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? When I can walk again, I'll immediately explain the essence of ethereal steps to you. I won't forget. Zhang Xiaohua rubbed her hands and said, that's good, that's good. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohu walked in with a surprised look on his face. What's the matter? Zhang Xiaohua asked casually, is it related to female disciples? Zhang Xiaohu glared at her and didn't answer. He walked in front of He Tianshu and asked carefully. He smiled and said, I wanted to accompany Martial Uncle He, but just now, a disciple came to inform me to go to Ethereal Hall in the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. He said that there's something important to discuss. Zhang Xiaohua didn't understand. He Tianshu said, Zhang Xiaohu, when did you see the market rising? Our Ethereal Hall actually has something important to discuss with you? Zhang Xiaohu said with a bitter face, Martial Uncle He, don't tease me. I'm also surprised. Why did Hall Master Yang suddenly look for me? I haven't recovered from my injuries yet. Forget it. If it's a blessing, it's not a curse. If it's a curse, we can't avoid it. We'll just go and take a look. Anyway, this is your Ethereal Hall's territory. What can go wrong? Zhang Xiaohua said confidently. Look at what you're talking about. Hall Master Yang is Bosso's wife. She won't do anything to let down the Misty School. What can happen to me? You don't have to worry. Zhang Xiaohu was extremely unhappy when he heard this. He cupped his hands towards He Tianshu and slowly walked out. When Zhang Xiaohu arrived at the ethereal hall, he saw several disciples that he wasn't familiar with. Looking at their clothes, he couldn't tell that they weren't from the ethereal hall. He couldn't help but be moved. Previously, Vice Hall Master Zhong wanted to gain some merit from Zhang Xiaohu and expand his own strength. It could also be considered as gaining the favor of the lingering fragrance peak's leader. Unfortunately, he encountered the heartless and unscrupulous Zhao Jian. If Zhao Jian didn't go back on his word and kill his senior sister, Zhong Pei's groundless crime might have fallen on Zhang Xiaohu's head. Zhao Jian's sin aside, it was just as Chen Shun of the lingering fragrance peak said, this was all handled by the Misty Hall. Just the fact that he cruelly pushed his lover off the cliff greatly touched the reverse scale of the lingering fragrance peak's hierarchy and also violated the rules of the lingering fragrance peak. Therefore, not only was Zhao Jian executed, even Zhong Pei had to return to the lingering fragrance peak with his tail between his legs. Putting aside the fact that Zhong Pei's departure meant that Zhang Xiaohua would not have a chance to find him, it was not necessarily a bad thing for him. Before leaving, Chen Shun of Lingering Fragrance Peak also said that the new Deputy Hall Master of Ethereal Hall would come to Shixin Peak. During this time, Zhang Xiaohu was in a good mood when he saw Zhang Xiaohua. With the help of Zhang Xiaohua, he healed his injuries, practiced martial arts, and so on. Yes, he also improved his relationship with Chang'e. He was so busy that he didn't care about the arrival of the new Vice Hall Master of the Ethereal Hall. Now that he saw the unfamiliar face in front of the Ethereal Hall, his first reaction was, the new Vice Hall Master has come. And this Vice Hall Master asked me to come on the first day of his arrival. Presumably, it had something to do with Yang Ruping, Aunt Qin, and the others' guests. It seemed that the lingering fragrance peak wanted to push him to the front. Zhang Xiaohu's reaction was normal. A few years ago, the lingering fragrance peak sent Zhong Pei to promote Zhang Xiaohu. He wasn't a direct disciple of the Misty School, but the disciple with the highest martial arts. Unfortunately, the results weren't very good. Although some young disciples tried to get close to Zhao Jian, the older disciples, and even the female disciples, didn't care. Seeing that there was a betrayal, the lingering fragrance peak had to change their strategy. Since Zhang Xiaohu was an old, weak, and direct disciple who had just entered the sect, he would naturally stand out. When he thought of the opportunity to stand out, Zhang Xiaohu had always longed for this opportunity. Zhang Xiaohu's steps became heavy. When the disciples of the lingering fragrance peak in front of the ethereal hall saw Zhang Xiaohua walking over, they frowned and wanted to raise their hands to question him. The disciple on duty at the side quickly stepped forward and cupped his hands. Senior brother Zhang, why are you here? Hallmaster Yang has been waiting for a long time. Zhang Xiaohu cupped his hands and returned the greeting. AI, it's not that I don't want to be faster. My injuries haven't healed and I can only walk slowly. If I'm faster, wouldn't all my efforts be wasted? That disciple nodded. Senior brother Zhang is right. Zhao Jian is truly hateful. He actually used his position to take revenge and tortured senior brother to this extent. It's already pretty good that senior brother was able to recover to this extent in such a short time. The other disciples of the lingering fragrance peak looked at Zhang Xiaohu and ignored him. Zhang Xiaohua sighed inwardly and walked into the ethereal hall. At this moment, there were still 3 people in the ethereal hall. Other than Yang Ruping and Aunt Qin, there was also a middle-aged scholar sitting to the left of Yang Ruping. He was very unfamiliar. Needless to say, he was the new Vice Hall Master. Zhang Xiaohu walked forward. After greeting Yang Ruping and Aunt Qin, he stood beside Aunt Qin. Yang Ruping looked at Zhang Xiaohu with a complicated expression and asked, Zhang Xiaohu, how are your injuries? I heard that the disciple on duty from the pill sprouting hall gave you a lot of pills. You should have recovered a lot. Zhang Xiaohu bowed. Thank you for your concern, Hall Master. Ren Xiaoyao from the pill sprouting hall can be considered a righteous person. When he saw that this disciple was seriously injured, he gave some of his precious blood replenishing pills and bone congealing pills to this disciple. Don't tell me, these pills are really useful. This disciple feels much better these days. Haha, that's good. Yang Ruping nodded and pointed at the middle-aged scholar. This is Gao Kunheng, an inner disciple of the Lingering Fragrance Peak. He is the Vice Hall Master sent by the Lingering Fragrance Peak. Pay your respects. Zhang Xiaohu was surprised. He walked over and bowed. Disciple Zhang Xiaohu pays his respects to Vice Hall Master Feng. When Gao Kunheng saw this, he immediately stood up and went forward to support him. He smiled. I have long heard of Martial Nephew Zhang's name. It can be said that your name resounds like thunder. Now that I have the chance to meet you, you are truly a talent. Come, sit down first. You have yet to recover from your injuries, so you still have to be careful. As he spoke, he pulled Zhang Xiaohu to the chair on his left. This, Zhang Xiaohu whispered. Vice Hall Master Feng, there are no seats for disciples in the Misty Hall. This disciple should stand at the side. However, how could Zhang Xiaohu break free from Gao Kunheng's grip when he exerted force? Zhang Xiaohu stole a glance at Yang Rupiying. Yang Rupiying's expression was very ugly. However, she still spoke in a low voice. Zhang Xiaohu, since Vice Hall Master Feng has such good intentions, you should just accept him. -3. Chapter 775. Yang Rupiying's words were like the sweet sounds of nature. Zhang Xiaohu was very happy and nodded to Gao Kunheng with a smile. Thank you, Vice Hall Master Gao, for giving me a seat. Then he sat down. He also understood in his heart that Gao Kunheng and Yang Rupiying each represented different interests, and the two of them would inevitably have conflicts. On the first day of their meeting, he might be the focus of the conflict, and he was just a chess piece. It was better not to offend either of them. After Zhang Xiaohu sat down, Gao Kunheng also sat down with satisfaction. He took out a jade bottle and handed it over with a smile. Martial Nephew Zhang, this is the secret medicine of lingering fragrance peak, the Yuandan pill. It is very good for your injuries. Take it first. If you need it again in the future, don't hesitate to ask me. Zhang Xiaohu's eyes lit up. He glanced sideways at Yang Rupiying and said with a smile, Vice Hall Master Gao is too polite. Disciples' injuries have already healed. It would be a waste to take such a precious pill again. Gao Kunheng pretended to be angry and threw the bottle into Zhang Xiaohua's arms, saying, What are you talking about? You are a core disciple of our Misty Hall. Even if this pill is precious, it should be used on a disciple like you. You should take it as soon as possible and recover as soon as possible, so that you can contribute to our Misty Hall and spreading fragrance peak. Zhang Xiaohu was overjoyed. He took the jade bottle in his hand and said, I dare not refuse an elder's gift. Thank you, Vice Hall Master Gao. Gao Kunheng casually waved his hand and glanced at Yang Rupiying. He then asked Zhang Xiaohu, it has been some time since Envoy Chen came. Before I came, I also paid a visit to Envoy Chen. I heard from her that the key point of your injury is external and has nothing to do with your meridians and dantian. When Envoy Chen left, she also left behind the reward given to you by the hierarch. I just don't know. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohu understood in his heart that as long as he didn't accept the universal pill and didn't practice the universal sutra, the Lingxiang Peak wouldn't treat him as a disciple that could be supported. Fortunately, he had a powerful younger brother who had taken care of this matter a few days ago. Zhang Xiaohua glanced at Gao Kunheng and then looked at Yang Rupiying. She used the Su Huan mental cultivation method and circulated her inner energy through her meridians. Then, she clenched her fist and punched out. Although Zhang Xiaohu had not recovered her inner energy, the wind from her fist surged and a faint chill was emitted from her fist. Wasn't this the inner energy of the Su Huan mental cultivation method? Good. Gao Kunheng exclaimed, I didn't expect Martial Nephew Zhang's aptitude to be so great. Even I couldn't catch up to you back then. With just 3 universal pills, wouldn't you be able to catch up to me in the future? 3 pills? Zhang Xiaohu frowned and thought to himself, I clearly took 1 universal pill, so how can I have the power of 3? I understand now. This universal essence pill is just a primer. It can turn the medicinal power into internal energy. However, this internal energy is very little. It can only activate the universal essence technique. The 3 universal essence pills, I'm afraid that the cult master of Lingering Fragrance Peak was afraid that my aptitude was poor, or that I had other ethereal divine arts internal energy, so he gave me an extra reward. Sect leader had never expected that this young master would be able to combine the ethereal divine art and the plain domain mental cultivation method. Moreover, just the plain domain mental cultivation method's internal energy is equivalent to the effect of taking 3 pills. It seems that I have to hurry up and take the other 2 pills so that others won't notice any flaws. Subsequently, Zhang Xiaohu said modestly, Vice Hall Master Feng is too kind. This is all thanks to the cult master. If it weren't for her giving me such wonderful pills, how could this disciple have today's achievements? Gao Kunheng glanced at Zhang Xiaohu and said, That's right. Then I hope that martial nephew Zhang can engrave today's gratitude in your heart. In the future, do your best for the hierarch and put your gratitude into action. Zhang Xiaohu nodded with a smile. Gao Kunheng turned to look at Yang Rupiying and said with a smile, Many thanks to Hall Master Yang for bringing such a young and promising disciple like Zhang Xiaohu to Serene Peak. They are not only the future of the Misty Hall, but also the future of the fragrant religion. I hope that our Misty Hall will prosper under our cooperation and compete with the other Wuming Halls, Heaven and Earth Hall, and Pill Expansion Halls. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohu had already taken the elemental pill and begun to cultivate the elemental essence cultivation method, Gao Kunheng's heart was finally at ease. He no longer fought with Yang Rupiying for anything and immediately began to express goodwill through words. Yang Rupiying's eyes were even more complicated. Looking at the disciple in front of her, who was no different from before, she thought that she didn't think much of him before and didn't have any special use for him. She couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Could it be that I really don't know how to judge people? In the past, Zhang Xiaohu's martial arts were very ordinary, and he even had the status of a direct disciple. It's a pity that this status was given to him by O Yan, and not because of his hard work. It's normal that I don't use him. I have to find a disciple with strong martial arts, one who can suppress everyone. But why is it that Lord Sect Leader always finds one? Yang Rupiying was wrong. It wasn't that she didn't know how to judge people. Her calculation was also good, but she forgot that if she put Zhang Xiaohu in an important position, would the cult master still use Zhang Xiaohu? And in front of the cult master's gift, even an ordinary disciple would be trained into a master. Of course, he was just a chess piece. There was no need to mention the fantasy of being a peerless master. Then, Gao Kunheng smiled and said, Hall Master Yang, I'm new here and am unfamiliar with many affairs of the Serene Peak. I'm afraid that I will delay the cult master's plan. I wonder if I can borrow the power of martial nephew Zhang and let him be my deputy. He also has a seat in the Misty Hall and can help me. Secondly, the young people are the hope of tomorrow. We are all the suns in the west in the afternoon, while Zhang Xiaohu and the others are the rising suns. Don't you think so? Yang Rupiying glanced at Aunt Qin, only to see Aunt Qin pondering for a moment before nodding. Zhang Xiaohu can be considered to have entered the original Misty sect under my watch. There's nothing to say about his character. Most importantly, he also has a certain amount of experience in Jianghu. He has a unique way of dealing with people. If we let him participate in some of the affairs of Misty sect, perhaps we can relax a little. Seeing that both of them agreed, Yang Rupiying sighed in her heart. But she still smiled and said, That's good. We were also optimistic about Zhang Xiaohu before, but Deputy Hall Master Zhong, alas, let's not talk about it. Since Zhang Xiaohu had an outstanding performance in the Orchid Evening Refining and brought back a large number of rare elixirs for our Misty Hall, even the cult master has rewarded him. How can our Misty Hall not reward him? Then, she glanced at Gao Kunheng, narrowed her eyes and asked, I wonder what Deputy Hall Master Zhong's suggestion is? Gao Kunheng had already given his good intentions to Zhang Xiaohu. He also knew that Zhang Xiaohu had practiced the Suhuan mantra, which of course meant that he had abandoned the ethereal divine art. It was in line with the cult master's wishes. Now, naturally, it was not convenient to complicate matters. He just cupped his hands and said, Hall Master Yang is too polite. I have just arrived at Serene Peak today. How dare I criticize the affairs of the Misty Hall? It's better to ask Hall Master Yang to make the decision. Humph. Yang Rupiying snorted coldly in her heart and said secretly, I haven't criticized him yet, but he has already criticized him countless times. However, you didn't do well when I rewarded him. You are tactful and will have an easier time in the future. So she nodded slightly and raised her eyes to Zhang Xiaohu and said, In this case, according to the rules of the Misty School, We will appoint you as the chief disciple of the Misty Hall. What do you think? Ah, Zhang Xiaohu was shocked. He immediately stood up and said, Hall Master Yang, this disciple appreciates your kindness. The identity of the chief disciple is really honorable. This disciple's martial arts are weak, I'm afraid. Aunt Qin and Gao Kunheng's expressions also changed. Aunt Qin looked at Yang Ruping and then at Gao Kunheng. She frowned slightly and then relaxed. Her eyes were suddenly enlightened. Gao Kunheng's face was somewhat gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. In fact, it was not difficult to guess. Gao Kunheng came to Serene Peak to replace Zhong Pei and to support Zhang Xiaohu to control the entire Misty Hall. He had just revealed his method of winning over Zhang Xiaohu. He just wanted to make Zhang Xiaohu his assistant and raise Zhang Xiaohu's status in the Misty Hall step by step. Then he would gain Zhang Xiaohu's favor and achieve the goal of the hierarch on Lingering Fragrance Peak. Yang Ruping had already seen through his thoughts. When she agreed to let Zhang Xiaohu participate in the affairs of the Misty Hall, she immediately promoted Zhang Xiaohu to the position of the chief disciple. Thus, Gao Kunheng's one way to win over Zhang Xiaohu was cut off. How could he not be angry? In a flash, Zhang Xiaohu vaguely felt that he had become a chess piece in the game between the two, so he didn't know how to deal with it. He just reflexively modestly. Yang Ruping squinted at him and said with a smile, Chief Disciple Zhang, you don't have to be polite. These days, the whole Serene Peak has been crazy. Every female disciple is praising your merits. If I don't give you the position of the chief disciple, how can you live up to it? This, Zhang Xiaohu blushed and looked embarrassed. Gao Kunheng's face was not good, but when he heard this, he was stunned and asked curiously, Hall Master Yang, what do you mean? Yang Ruping still snorted and said expressionlessly, You'll have to ask your future assistant about this. Seeing Yang Ruping like this, Gao Kunheng was even more curious. He turned his head and said, Master Nephew Zhang, if there is anything interesting, don't hide it anymore. Zhang Xiaohu's face was flushed red. Fortunately, he had already told Zhang Xiaohua that he had picked up a jade bottle from the Yulong Grand Canyon. It was very fragrant, but he did not see anything special. Therefore, when he returned to Serene Peak, he inadvertently washed the bottle and found that the clear water in the vat had become fragrant. It was then that the medicine boy from the Tuapata Hall smelled it and said that it was some kind of stone milk that could whiten the skin. The medicine boy drank a few jade bottles and turned around to give them to Chen Shan. -3. Chapter 776. Zhang Xiaohu told the story that he and Zhang Xiaohua had discussed, but Gao Kunheng couldn't help laughing. He wanted to laugh, but he was too embarrassed to do so, but he couldn't hold it back. It was really painful. After a long time, Zhang Xiaohu finished his story. He gasped for breath and pointed at Zhang Xiaohu. You can really talk nonsense. How can the stone milk become whitening elixir when mixed with clear water? You really make me laugh. Zhang Xiaohu said innocently. Ren Xiaoyao of the Tuoda Hall said so. And Chen Shan has used it, and the pimples on his face have indeed disappeared. He is just a little medicine boy of the Tuodu Hall. What does he know? Gao Kunheng laughed for a while and scolded with a smile. Although the stone milk can whiten and remove rot, its greatest effect is to improve internal force. You should have filled it with stone milk. Although it is empty, you can rinse it with clear water and drink it. Maybe it can increase your strength for several years. But you poured it all into the water tank and gave it to the senior and junior sisters of the Misty Hall. This is generous. Zhang Xiaohu scratched his head. How can these disciples know? But I am also happy to make the senior and junior sisters happy and stay young forever. It is better than increasing my strength for several years. Gao Kunheng said curiously. I didn't expect Master Nephew Zhang to be such an affectionate person. Good. Well, although it didn't improve internal force, you won the favor of the female disciples. You didn't suffer a loss in this business. Yang Ruping was a little angry. Now almost every female disciple on Serene Peak has a bottle. They rub it on their hands and faces. It is fragrant. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohu hurried forward and took out 4 jade bottles from his arms. He said embarrassedly, Hall Masters, I have prepared them long ago, but I didn't know you, so I didn't dare to give them to you. Aunt Qin glanced at Yang Ruping and stood up to receive it. I told you, eldest master nephew Zhang wouldn't forget us. Look, isn't it delivered here? Yang Ruping didn't say anything, but she was somewhat gratified in her heart. She had also heard of the reputation of this heaven stalactite milk, but she had no fate to see it, since she couldn't obtain a drop. But with this whitening elixir beauty treatment, it could be considered to be able to preserve some of her beauty. As for this pill elixir, Changgu had already given her 2 bottles a few days ago through Aunt Qin. Now that Zhang Xiaohu gave it to her again, she still accepted it. Which woman in the world would refuse her own beauty? Alas, it had to be said that beauty was extremely important to every woman. Yang Ruping accepted the elixir with a smile on her face. However, Aunt Qin said in a low voice, I don't have any objections to Marshal Niece Zhang being the chief disciple. It's just that the title of chief disciple was originally used by the Misty School. Now that we are the Misty Hall, I'm afraid it's not that useful, right? On the hierarch's side, wouldn't it be hard to convince him? Hearing this, Gao Kunheng smiled and said, the hierarch's original intention is for the Misty Hall to prosper day by day. Hall Master Yang's good idea will definitely increase the cohesion of the disciples of the Misty Hall. I think the hierarch will agree. If it's not convenient for Hall Master Yang, I can report to the hierarch on your behalf. No need. Yang Ruping said decisively, this matter will naturally be proposed by me, the Hall Master. Deputy Hall Master Qian, you don't have to trouble yourself. Then, Aunt Qin said, also, Hall Master Yang, you have to think about it a little. In the Misty Hall, Du Feng, Ding Chao, and the other disciples whose martial arts are higher than Zhang Xiaohu's were not very obedient to Zhao Jian. However, during this period of time, they have been doing their best to be valued by the Hall Master. I'm afraid they won't be convinced. Speaking of the several outstanding disciples of the Misty Hall, Yang Ruping was a little tongue-tied. These people were people that Yang Ruping thought highly of before. She wanted to use them to fight against Zhong Pei and Zhao Jian. However, Zhang Xiaohu's sudden appearance had disrupted her plan. In addition, she wanted to surpass Gao Kunheng today and help Zhang Xiaohu to the position of chief disciple. For a moment, she didn't know how to arrange these people. Seeing that Yang Ruping was so tough against the lingering fragrance peak and was so tangled and hesitant about the internal affairs of the Shirxin peak, Gao Kunheng smiled in his heart and said, Congratulations, Hall Master Yang. I didn't expect that our Misty Hall would have so many outstanding disciples. It's really a blessing for the Hall Master. Then, he changed the topic and said coldly, however, the name is not right. The inner disciples of the fragrant cult are the inheritors of the cult. I have never heard of an outer disciple who can inherit the fragrant cult. Hall Master Yang, as an inner disciple of the fragrant cult, don't you know? Moreover, do you think that an inner disciple like me can also inherit the fragrant cult? Although the Misty sect has been destroyed, the sect leaders set up the Misty Hall on the Shirxin Peak for 2 reasons. Firstly, it was to protect Hall Master Yang and fulfill the promise he made on the Misty Peak that day. Secondly, it was to respect the legacy of the Misty sect. He didn't want to impose everything of the fragrant cult on the disciples of the Misty sect. Otherwise, with the strength of the fragrant cult, wouldn't the disciples of the Misty Hall have been defeated long ago? Why would he allow them to squabble on the Shirxin Peak? And when it comes to the inheritance of the Misty School, except for Master Nephew Zhang, who can take this position? Wen Hai? Lu Yueming? And that Du Feng you mentioned? Ding Chao? Yang Ruping felt sad. That's right, Wen Hai and Lu Yueming's martial arts were all crippled, and they were only as healthy as ordinary people, so they definitely couldn't do it. As for Du Feng, Ding Chao, and the others, although their martial arts were outstanding, they weren't direct disciples after all, so they didn't have the proper title. Seeing that Yang Ruping did not speak, Gao Kunheng pointed to Zhang Xiaohu and said, Although I haven't seen Master Nephew Zhang before, I heard from Messenger Chun that he is affectionate and righteous. He rescued junior sisters Chang'e and Chan Chun, as well as the disciples of Tuodin Hall. In addition, he also saved the dying senior sister. Of course, at that time, he thought he was an inner disciple of our Lingxiang Peak. Not to mention who this person was, just based on his attitude, Hierarch Darren greatly appreciated him. Today, I heard that Zhang Xiaohu mixed the stone milk, which could increase one's power, into the clear water and distributed it to all the female disciples of the serene peak. He is really kind and generous. He is now the uncrowned chief disciple of the serene peak. Hall Master Yang's reward is even a little late. Speaking of martial arts, Master Nephew Zhang has been rewarded by Sect Master Yang and has already practiced the Suhuan Heart method. Isn't his internal strength improving by leaps and bounds? Coupled with the sword and fist skills of the former Misty School, his future achievements are limitless. How can Du Feng and Ding Chao compare with him? I advise Hall Master Yang to go to the Lingxiang Peak to ask for the reward. Although the chief disciple of the Misty Hall is unprecedented, from today on, it is Master Nephew Zhang's. Hearing Gao Kunheng's long-winded words, Yang Rupiying's face had already turned cold. She scolded in her heart, "Is there something wrong with this guy? I was the one who wanted to give him this title. You said so much as if you were remonstrating with death. Are you afraid that Zhang Xiaohu won't buy your favor? Alas, where does Zhang Xiaohu get this damn luck?" Then, she waved her hand and said, "Deputy Hallmaster Feng, don't say too much. We have already decided. What's the point of saying so?" Aunt Qin continued. In addition, the previous chief disciple of the Misty School was Zhang Qingyue. He lost the waste token of the Misty School inheritance long ago. This is also a difficult matter. This is easy. We will send someone to report this matter to Sect Master Yang and ask her to give an order to find the waste token of the Misty School inheritance. If we can't find it, we can make another one. There are many experts in the refining hall. It shouldn't be a problem to make a waste token. But the waste token of the inheritance is gone. After all, it's still not legitimate. Gao Kunheng sneered. As long as Sect Master Yang decrees, from today on, Zhang Xiaohu will be the chief disciple of the inheritance. All his waste tokens will be the inheritance waste tokens. It's no big deal. Aunt Qin was speechless. History had always been written by power. Even the inheritance was ordinary. Whatever Sect Master Yang said, wasn't it what it was? Zhang Xiaohu was in a daze as he listened. It wasn't that he didn't expect to have some unexpected gains today, but at first, it was still within his acceptable range. Later on, things had developed out of control, and in the end, there was even a chief disciple's legacy waste token. Strange, what was this thing? He didn't seem to have seen it on Zhang Qingyue's body. Even his master didn't mention anything about this waste token. While Zhang Xiaohu was in a daze, he heard Yang Rupiying say, "Master Nephew Zhang, you can leave. If there are any matters in the Misty Hall in the future, I will send a disciple to invite you." Oh, although the hall has appointed you as the chief disciple of the Misty Hall, this is the first time in the fragrant cult. This matter still needs to be reported to Sect Master Yang. You can stay in the original small courtyard for the time being. Zhang Xiaohu hurriedly waved his hand and said, "I'll follow Hall Master Yang's arrangement. However, I won't change the small courtyard. It's very close to Master and the others. I need to ask for some advice on martial arts and some matters in the sect." Yang Rupiying liked to hear these words. She cheerfully said, "That's good. You don't forget your roots. Good temperament. You can leave. Your injury hasn't healed yet. You'd better recuperate first." Zhang Xiaohu still had a headache. After saluting the 3 hall masters, he walked back to his small courtyard in a daze. He drank a few cups of tea in the hall to moisten his thirsty lips and burning chest. Only then did he remember that Zhang Xiaohua and He Tianshu were still in his backyard. So, he hurriedly closed the courtyard door and walked into the hut quickly. In the hut, Zhang Xiaohua and He Tianshu were laughing and talking about something. Seeing Zhang Xiaohu hurriedly walk in with an unconcealable blush on his face, Zhang Xiaohua joked, "What's wrong? Second brother, did Hall Master Yang grant you a marriage on the spot? You look so beautiful." He Tianshu lay on the bed and also grinned, saying, "Congratulations, Master Nephew Zhang. You actually have a positive result." Ha ha ha. Zhang Xiaohu didn't think it was a joke. He lowered his voice and said, "It's even better than this. Take a guess?" "Eh." Zhang Xiaohua said in surprise, "Is it possible that Chen Chun, the little tail, also followed us to the Zhang family?" -3. Chapter 777. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohu finally got angry and said, Can't you have other pursuits? Zhang Xiaohua was stunned and said curiously, Isn't life just a bowl of porridge, a well-behaved child and a man and a woman's affair? Can you have other pursuits? Zhang Xiaohu looked regretful and said, Quality, quality, Xiaohua. Don't say that you know me in the future. Zhang Xiaohua shrugged and said, It doesn't matter to me. I'm just Ren Xiaoyao, a little pharmacist in the Tuidan Hall. I have nothing to do with your brother Zhang Xiaohua. I don't worry about Ren Xiaoyao's quality. Then he winked at Zhang Xiaohu and said, There is also a big wooden barrel in the small courtyard of the Tuidan Hall. Hee, that barrel is much bigger than second brother's barrel. If I'm happy one day and take a bath in it, do you think my prestige in the Misty Hall will immediately skyrocket? Zhang Xiaohu blushed slightly and looked at He Tianshu, who was lying on the bed and didn't know what they were talking about. He whispered, Does your prestige have anything to do with quality? No matter how rich a nouveau riche is, he is still a bumpkin. I don't care. As long as I have money, is there anything in the world that I can't do? Zhang Xiaohua spread his hands and looked indifferent. What are you two talking about? He Tianshu asked curiously, Xiaohu, don't you have some good news to tell us? I'm really waiting. If Chang'e and Qin both marry you, of course, it can't be better. Martial Uncle He, don't listen to Xiaohua's nonsense. Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly. Fortunately, they were in the backyard and no one in the room could hear them. If they were outside, he wouldn't be able to explain himself even if he had 10 mouths. Then he said, In fact, it's like this. Zhang Xiaohu told He Tianshu what had happened in the Misty Hall. He Tianshu's expression was uncertain, but Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, Congratulations, second brother. In this way, your status will rise. Chief disciple Tut. Wasn't that Zhang Qingyue's position in the past? At that time, he was very prestigious. I didn't expect you to have such a day. Zhang Xiaohu ignored him and turned to look at He Tianshu. He Tianshu thought for a moment and said with a wry smile, Hall Master Yang is also a little impatient. In order to compete with Gao Kunheng, she even took out the position of the chief disciple. Although I'm not a direct disciple, but I also know that the identity of the first direct disciple has to be conferred by the sect leader of the ethereal sect. Although Hall Master Yang is also the Hall Master of the ethereal sect, but after all, he is not the sect leader of the ethereal sect. Moreover, although she is the wife of sect leader O, but she has to greet Martial Uncle Li and Martial Uncle Lu first. At the very least, she has to ask your master and senior brother Lu. Her letter is preemptive. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua was confused. What Martial Uncle Li? What Martial Uncle Lu? However, he didn't care. He just listened with interest and watched his second brother, who was about to have a meteoric rise. He wanted to see how he would deal with it. Zhang Xiaohu nodded calmly and said, Martial Uncle He's words are reasonable. Just now, disciple was too happy and forgot about this matter. But at that time, the situation didn't allow me to say anything. I just declined and was scolded by Hall Master Yang and Deputy Hall Master Qian. Haha, He Tianshu laughed and said, This is a good thing. Our Misty School does need a chief disciple. Although I don't care about the affairs of the hall, I know that many handsome young people want this position. You have this opportunity to receive the support of the incense cult and the Misty Hall. Naturally, you have to go with the flow and get this position. Don't let others take advantage of it. You just need to deal with it well, and there won't be any obstacles. After all, you are the chief disciple of the Misty School. He Tianshu didn't know that Zhang Xiaohu practiced the Suhuan mantra. Of course, he was surprised that Zhang Xiaohu could receive the support of the incense cult. Instead, he kept trying to comfort him. Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly. After pondering for a moment, he said, Martial Uncle Li and Martial Uncle Lu have never interacted with Hall Master Yang. Moreover, I can't easily go to their place. I don't even know how to greet them. If they don't buy it, it'll be difficult. In that case, I'll go talk to Master first and see what he thinks. It must be so. After all, you are the chief disciple. You should know more. For example, I've only seen the chief disciple's token, but I don't know the details. Good, then there's no time to lose. I'll go now. Zhang Xiaohu got up and was about to leave. Zhang Xiaohua grabbed him and pointed at He Tianshu. Captain He's joints have already begun to recover. Second brother, why don't you try to repair his meridians while he's still in bed? If it works, we'll let him cultivate slowly. That way, we'll know what to do. What if it doesn't work? Don't you want to think of another way? Zhang Xiaohu was surprised. Is it that urgent? Nonsense. Of course you're not in a hurry. There are thousands of people who want me to treat. How long will it take? I don't even know if I can repair their dantian. How can I not be anxious? Zhang Xiaohua secretly criticized. He Tianshu also smiled. There's no need to be so anxious. I've been in bed for many years. It doesn't matter if I lie down for a while more. Xiaohu's matter is urgent. It's best to discuss it with junior brother one and find a suitable method. Don't let this good thing turn into a bad thing. Zhang Xiaohua secretly curled her lips. Second brother only reached out and sealed your acupuncture points. He can go after he's done. Don't worry. Sure enough, Zhang Xiaohu also pretended to be enlightened. He patted his forehead and said, Look at me. I'm so happy that I've lost my mind. My matter is nothing. It's not as important as Martial Uncle He's recovery. Moreover, Martial Uncle He's matter involves the cultivation of my master, Martial Uncle and Martial Uncle. This can't be delayed. He Tianshu's gratitude was incomparable. Just thinking about it made sense. She didn't care about her bright future and hid in this small dark room to help him recover his strength, allowing him to be lively and vigorous. If she didn't have any mental activity, then how could it be possible? He Tianshu was a little choked up and said, Xiaohu, as your martial uncle, I didn't expect you brothers to be so benevolent. Xiaohua, you should learn from your second brother in the future. Just based on this breadth of mind, only he can be the chief disciple of Man Shirxin Peak. Damn, Zhang Xiaohua was full of unhappiness. Do I still need to learn from him? Zhang Xiaohu looked at Zhang Xiaohua with satisfaction and said, Alas, Xiaohua, you're still young and the road ahead is long. You should increase your experience and learn from the older generation, especially Martial Uncle He. Under his guidance, you have to work harder. Zhang Xiaohua looked at He Tianshu's eager eyes and nodded. Second brother, you're right. In the future, I really need to learn from you and be a good martial brother. He emphasized the word, martial brother. Zhang Xiaohu took advantage of him and didn't argue with him. He waved his hand and said, Well, you get ready. I'll seal Martial Uncle He's acupoints first. He Tianshu was stunned. Xiaohu, when you crushed my joints, you sealed my acupoints because you were afraid that I would feel unbearable pain. But when you repair my meridians, it shouldn't be necessary. Do I also need to use my neishi? Zhang Xiaohu shook his head and said confidently, It has nothing to do with you. You just need to wait and adjust your neishi. Damn, Zhang Xiaohua almost jumped up. She grabbed Zhang Xiaohu's ear and asked him, Where did you get your confidence from? You're just drawing a pie for Captain He. If you don't succeed, won't he be very disappointed? He Tianshu looked a little excited and nodded. Since martial nephew Zhang said so, then let's do it. Great. This eldest martial nephew Zhang had actually called Zhang Xiaohu out. He was already treating Zhang Xiaohu as the chief disciple. Zhang Xiaohu stepped forward and said, It's been hard on you, Martial Uncle He. After that, he waved his hand and sealed a few acupoints. Then, he retreated to the side. Zhang Xiaohua quickly stepped forward and sealed a few acupoints of He Tianshu. Then she said, Second brother, are you going to where Hero One is? Yes. Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said, Martial Uncle He's words are very reasonable. I can't just rely on Hall Leader Yang and Lingxiang Peak. If I don't have the support of my master, even if I'm the chief disciple for a long time, I won't be able to convince the public and be justified. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, Then go quickly. Leave this to me. If you succeed, you can also give Hero One a surprise. He won't have to not support you. Zhang Xiaohu patted his shoulder and said, That's good. You've worked hard. I'll ask your second sister-in-law to cook you streaky pork later. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua almost fell down. You can't coax a child like this. It was very boring. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, Forget it. Go to your thing. I'm not eating the food of mortals anymore. You're bluffing, Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile. Then, He shook his sleeves and walked out of the house with a solemn look. It was quite similar to Zhang Chengyue's steadiness in the past. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head and smiled. She turned around and walked to the front of the bed. She stretched out her hand to check He Tianchu's pulse and transferred a strand of true energy to him. She carefully checked his meridians and dantian. Then, she poured out a meridian-nourishing pill from the jade bottle and placed it in He Tianchu's mouth. She waited for the meridian-nourishing pill's medicinal efficacy to dissolve. Then, she wrapped the medicinal efficacy with true energy and circulated it along his meridians until it gradually reached his dantian. There were many broken meridians in He Tianchu's body, and they had been broken for a long time. Therefore, it took a lot of medicinal power to repair them. However, Zhang Xiaohua only repaired the broken meridians slightly and left a little medicinal power to let them recover by themselves. Then, she sent the medicinal power to his dantian. -3. Chapter 778. He Tianchu's meridians were severely damaged. By the time Zhang Xiaohua had repaired all the broken meridians in his body and reached his dantian, Zhang Xiaohua's forehead was already covered in sweat. However, when she thought about how she only needed to repair his dantian, Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but feel refreshed. She concentrated all her attention on the work of patching up the gaps. At the same time, in Wenhai's small courtyard, Wenhai frowned slightly as he listened to Zhang Xiaohu's narration. When Zhang Xiaohu finished, he pondered for a moment and asked, "Xiaohu, in the end, you took the unipolar pill?" Zhang Xiaohua was shocked and knew that her master had misunderstood. She quickly explained, "Yes, your disciple did." Without waiting for her to finish, Wenhai waved his hand and said, "Since you have already taken it, there is no need to explain." Zhang Xiaohu opened his mouth, but the words didn't come out. After a while, Wenhai let out a long sigh and said, "Actually, even if you took it, you should have discussed it with me. Sai, as a man of indomitable spirit, it's understandable that you pursue the peak of martial arts and the pinnacle of power, but it's inappropriate for you to use this method. Even if I and your martial uncle Liu agreed, what about martial ancestor Li and martial ancestor Liu? How could they tolerate you? Even if you took the decree of the lingering fragrance peak's leader, how many of the disciples of the Misty School would truly acknowledge you? AI, but it is also my fault. I thought that your injuries were very serious and you would need to recuperate for a long time, so I didn't go to see you. Moreover, I also wanted you to think carefully and make your own choice. It seems that some things are better not to be interrogated. If you probe too many times, it might become distrust." Zhang Xiaohu saw that his master had said a lot, so she didn't dare to hide anything. She only whispered the truth of the matter in detail. "What? You've actually mastered both the ethereal divine technique and the plain domain mantra?" Wenhai almost screamed out loud. Then, he lowered his voice and said, How is this possible? Didn't Envoy Chan from Lingering Fragrance Peak warn you that day? Don't even think about trying to practice 2 cultivation methods at the same time. You are too bold." Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly. He really wanted to say that he had been wronged, that his dantian had been broken, that his ethereal divine art had dissipated, and that he had suffered the same thing as Wenhai. However, if he did that, he would not be able to keep the lie that he had helped Wenhai repair his dantian. He could only say, wasn't this disciple also forced? On the one hand, if the disciple did not listen to the Lingering Fragrance Peak's roping, the outcome would be even more miserable than the master's. On the other hand, the disciple did not want to leave the teachings of the master. At all times, the disciple had to remember that he was a disciple of the Misty School. The art of ethereal divine art was the foundation of all martial arts. Didn't Envoy Chan from Lingering Fragrance Peak also say that? The new Deputy Hall Master will arrive soon, and the first thing the new Deputy Hall Master will do when he arrives at the Shershin Peak will definitely be to urge the disciple to take the universal pill. If there was someone watching at that time, it would be impossible to practice 2 cultivation methods at the same time. That's why the disciple rashly practiced 2 cultivation methods at the same time when his injuries had not healed. It was also the manifestation of the dead disciple of the Misty School. The disciple actually managed to practice 2 cultivation methods at the same time by accident when he was suffering from chi deviation. Why don't you circulate the art of ethereal divine art for your master to see? When Wenhai was somewhat in disbelief, Zhang Xiaohu smiled as he circulated the art of ethereal divine art and pointed a few fingers. When Wenhai could clearly see that it was the inner strength of the art of ethereal divine art. However, he was still doubtful. Didn't Envoy Chun say that the universal pill technique was the most mystical and could simulate all inner strength cultivation methods? Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, Master, you're being too suspicious. If it was really a simulation, would this disciple come here to embarrass himself? Furthermore, this disciple has just taken the universal pill, and the universal pill technique is only at the entry level. How can I simulate other inner strength? Not to mention, this art of ethereal divine art is an inner strength secret manual that is not much inferior to the universal pill technique. It's impossible for me to imitate it in a few days. When Wenhai heard this, he was very happy in his heart and said with a smile, Master doesn't have any inner strength to check it. Since you said so, how can I not believe you? However, why did the new Vice Hall Master Gao believe you so easily? If it was you, would you believe it? Zhang Xiaohu asked back. When Wenhai pondered for a moment and said, I should believe it. It's only been a few days, and you're not someone with outstanding talent. It's impossible for you to practice 2 cultivation methods at the same time. Furthermore, you don't have any inner strength in your body. In the past few days, you could only rely on the universal pill to have some inner strength in the meridians in your body. Then, he said, since you haven't forgotten your roots and the cultivation method you practice is still the art of ethereal divine art, then I think I will definitely support you as the head disciple. Even your martial uncle Liu and martial uncle Shui should support you. Zhang Xiaohu said somewhat apologetically, Actually, Master, this title of head disciple, only you are worthy of it. Don't comfort me. When Wenhai said with a bitter smile, Even if you give me the title of head disciple, I'm a person whose martial arts have been crippled. What use can I have? Your 2 martial uncles, and even your 2 martial ancestors, are also useless. And you are the direct disciple of my Misty school. Only you are worthy of this title. When Wenhai thought for a while and said, It's just that your art of ethereal divine art, for the time being, oh no, you can never let the people of Lingering Fragrance Peak know about it. For you, the head disciple, the elders of our Misty school can only support you because you are the direct disciple of the Misty school. They can't support you because you have the art of ethereal divine art. Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said, Master is right. I also have the same idea. It's just that I don't know how to tell Master and the other martial uncles. Haha. When Wenhai laughed and said, It doesn't matter. Wait until you train for a few more years and have a certain level of attainment in your internal strength. Then you can use the plain domain mantra as you wish. Why don't you reveal the real art of ethereal divine art and say that you used the plain domain mantra to imitate it? Ha ha ha. The leader of Lingering Fragrance Peak only knows that you are practicing the internal strength of the fragrance sect. But he didn't know that your internal strength really does contain the art of ethereal divine art. The real is fake, and the fake is real. Only we can understand what is real and what is fake. Let's go. I'll bring you to see the 2 martial uncles and tell them about this joyful matter. They are also very concerned about you. It's just that your martial arts are not good enough, and you have always been suppressed by others. They are also very unhappy. Isn't it getting late? How about we wait until tomorrow? Zhang Xiaohu was somewhat hesitant. Let's go. We should tell them about this joyous matter and let them laugh tonight. When Wenhai was still in high spirits and pulled Zhang Xiaohu out of the hall. After they left the hall, when Wenhai was not in a hurry to leave the courtyard. He first looked at the courtyard next door and said happily, Look, your martial uncles also know that there is a joyous matter today and did not go to bed early. When Wenhai brought Zhang Xiaohu out of the courtyard, they were not in a hurry to go next door. Instead, they walked a few steps and came to a door. They pushed the door open and entered. He called out loudly, Junior Brother Liu, what are you doing here? They only heard a lazy voice. Is it Senior Brother Wen? Why are you here at this time? When Zhang Xiaohu and when Wenhai entered the hall, they saw a person dressed like a scholar. He was holding a book in his hand and was sitting under the light. He was looking at them with a strange expression. It was Lu Yueming. "Greetings, Martial Uncle Lu." Zhang Xiaohu did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly went forward to greet him. "Haha, get up." Lu Yueming put down the book and said with a smile, "Xiaohu, you haven't been here for a long time. I heard from the disciples that your orchid dust cultivation was not going well. Even though you made a great contribution to the Misty Hall, you were still harmed. How are your injuries now?" "They have improved greatly. I think it will take a few more days to fully recover." Zhang Xiaohu hurriedly replied. "Well, okay." Lu Yueming did not want to say more. He raised his head and asked Wenhai, "Senior brother, you came in a hurry. Is there something urgent?" Wenhai said mysteriously, "It's not urgent. Is it a joyous matter?" "Joyous matter?" Lu Yueming could not help but smile bitterly. What joyous matter can there be on Shixin Peak? "Come, let's go to junior sister Shui and talk about it together." When Wenhai went forward and grabbed Lu Yueming, he called Zhang Xiaohu and said, "Xiaohu, come here and help your martial uncle Lu. Let's go together." "You." Lu Yueming was somewhat helpless. "You know that I can't move freely. If there's any joyous matter, you can say it here. Why do you have to go to junior sister Shui's place?" "If I ask you to go, then go. Why are you nagging?" When Wenhai glared at him, "Sai, I really don't know what to do with you." Lu Yueming was helpless. He pointed to the side and said, "Xiaohu, help me get my crutches." Zhang Xiaohu obeyed and went to get a crutches. He put it under Lu Yueming's armpit and supported him with one hand. He then followed Wenhai out of the courtyard. The three went back again and came to a half-closed door. Before they could go up the stairs, a strong fragrance of flowers came from the half-opened door. Wenhai's face unconsciously showed a trace of a smile. He looked back at the two and went forward to knock on the door. A slightly hoarse voice sounded. "Who is it?" "Junior sister. It's me, Lu Yueming, and Zhang Xiaohu." You haven't rested yet?" That voice laughed out loud. "Senior brother one, if I'm resting, how can this door still be open?" Then we can go in?" "Come in." That voice laughed. When Zhang Xiaohu helped Lu Yueming into the courtyard, they saw a table and a chair in the spacious courtyard. A woman was sitting on the chair with her right arm hanging straight down. A wooden sword was casually held in her left hand. It was none other than Xueqing, heroine Shui. Zhang Xiaohu went forward and greeted Xueqing. He walked into the main hall and took 2 chairs from inside. He invited his master and martial uncle to sit while he stood behind Wenhai. Xueqing looked at the 3 of them strangely and said with a smile, "It's so late at night. Why did the 2 of you suddenly think of coming to my place?" Chidian. -3. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.